Call this October 23rd board meeting for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to order. As we begin our meeting today, please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast via the internet. As we do this, I'm going to go ahead and turn my phone down, and I would suggest you all do the same. At any point, the meeting today is being broadcast via the internet, so at any point, any of us, including some of you in the audience, may be visible to anyone watching online. Also, as a reminder, again, please silence your cell phones and your computers. Today, I know we have at least one university president with us, but is Dr. Betty Renard from Lamar here scheduled? Dr. William Fannin, the interim president of UT Brownsville. Javidan Rodriguez, Dr. Javidan Rodriguez, interim president of the University of Texas Pan American. All right, we've held you all in suspense. Now I know this guy's here, Dr. Guy Bailey, the president of UT Rio Grande Valley. Guy, welcome back. Also today we have a special guest, a fellow that's near and dear to all of us that have been involved in the coordinating board. Bob Shepard was chairman of the coordinating board. Bob, I believe, from 2005 to 2008. Would you stand? Give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Mostly past chairmen of the coordinating board just crawl off somewhere and you never see them again. So, Bob, we're glad to see you here today. Just a couple of announcements. Our annual Texas Higher Education Leadership Conference, titled Planning Educationally for a Competitive Global Economy, will be held in Austin on November 20th and 21st at the Doubletree Hotel in North Austin. This year's focus will be on the next long-term higher education plan for Texas and the preliminary recommendations of the Texas Higher Education Strategic Planning Committee that has been meeting monthly since March. Our keynote speakers and panelists will include leading experts from higher education and the workforce who will discuss the goals and possible targets and strategies that are being considered for the next plan. The conference will begin at 8 a.m. on November the 20th with new governing board orientation sessions that will satisfy the training requirements for newly appointed regents and elected trustees. Conference sessions will overlap with some of the orientation sessions and will begin at 1 p.m. on November the 20th. The annual State of Higher Education Luncheon and annual Texas Higher Education Star Award Ceremony will be held on November 21st, the second day of the conference. This luncheon will feature our 2014 Star Award finalist, and the commissioner will be giving the State of Higher Education address, which we always look forward to, Raymond. The Leadership Conference will conclude directly after the Star Award ceremony about 2 o'clock on November the 20th. We certainly hope that all of you can attend. At this point, the Commissioner will provide his thoughts on some of the more important agenda items that we will be considering today. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Chairman Hahn. Well, there's a theme in my comments and those that will follow from some of our higher education leaders in the state. This is the last meeting of the coordinating board before the commencement of the session, the legislative session, and I wanted to give everyone an update on where we are. We have been working very hard to consult with our colleagues on the campuses in all three sectors, the community colleges, the Texas State technical colleges, our public universities, to talk about their concerns and how we might align all of our interests and push with a common strategy for issues that we all care about. You will hear from the chancellors in just a moment about their primary concerns. I can tell you that there's an awful lot of interest in the legislature about the work that the coordinating board is doing. I thought I'd mention a couple of the issues that seem to have particular interest from the legislature. The first, of course, is Advise Texas. We've testified about that already a couple of times. There's an awful lot of interest in recognizing Advise Texas as a significant tool in advancing the effectiveness of House Bill 5. There's broad awareness that we have inadequate academic advising on our high school campuses, and when we talk to legislators, they see Advise Texas as a way of supplementing, not replacing, but supplementing the existing academic advising that goes on high school campuses. We have a lot of support from some district superintendents who have implemented Advise Texas on their high school campuses, and so they will be strong advocates for expanding or at least retaining the current level of the program. We've had a lot of interest in the Texas Grant Priority Model and in Texas Grant as well. We talked about the importance of Texas Grant as always in our LAR. There's been some interest in learning about how the Texas Grant Priority Model is working out. Some of you will remember that Texas Grant, what we proposed is to go from a need-only system for Texas Grant to a need plus merit system where students who have not only demonstrated great need but have also demonstrated certain levels of academic success would get priority over students who simply had need but didn't necessarily have distinguished academic records. We wanted to do this because we wanted to recognize hard work. We wanted to send a message to all students that hard work matters, and it raises the level of likelihood of success. So we've rolled out the priority model for the first year, and it's working out about the way we planned. There hasn't been any decline in the ethnic composition or significant change in the ethnic composition of the pool of Texas Grant recipients or students that are eligible for the program. So that's good news. A lot of interest in the TSI assessment. People interested in knowing how it's working out, how its diagnostics are helping us do a better job in placing students in developmental ed or co-requisite courses and so forth. There's a lot of interest in the bottom end of the scale and what we're going to do about adult basic education for those students that are not close to being college ready. As we've discussed here at the board, we don't want to abandon any students at whatever level of academic readiness students have. We want to find ways to get them up to some form of credential, some form of workforce credential or some form of academic credential. A lot of interest, as all of you know, in aligning higher education more closely with workforce needs. There's a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm for the fact that the coordinating board, the Texas Education Agency, and the Texas Workforce Commission are working very closely together from the commissioner level across various levels of staff cooperation. Lots of interest, of course, in graduate medical education, and we will have a lot of questions about that during the session. A lot of interest in transfer issues. I expected we'll hear something about that from the chancellors this morning. A lot of interest in making sure that universities and community colleges, two-year institutions are working as closely as they should to make sure that we ensure the highest probability of success for students that are interested in transferring. We've made a lot of reports on the status of closing the gaps, and the legislature knows where we stand on probably the two most important metrics. We're doing very well. Success, we've already exceeded our 2015 goals, and we have a solid chance of achieving our goals for enrollments and access. We're also talking about Be On Time, and we're talking about how ways that we can fine-tune our financial aid programs to make them more accessible to the largest number of students and also to make them more successful. We are talking about our three top legislative priorities. Outcomes-based funding. There's clearly a lot of interest and a lot of support for the fact that we address the issue of one size doesn't fit all. Our Formula Funding Advisory Committee, which is made up of university representatives, came up with a methodology so that universities can tweak the weight of the various metrics in a manner that's consistent with their institutional priorities and their institutional character. So we feel optimistic about that. Obviously, there will be some conversation about SB 414, and then our third priority, and this is in no particular order, is authorization of TRBs. We've talked to several legislators about bills and how we could help the legislature with this process. So I think we're moving along very quickly, getting ready for the session, and I think we've got all of our critical issues on the table, and I think the legislature is well informed about them, and we'll see how things work out once the session begins.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The second agenda item is, let's see, is there any questions, concerns, corrections? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Yep. Okay, John makes a motion, Doris seconds. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 3 is approval of the consent calendar for the entire meeting. The consent calendar includes non-controversial items that we think can be approved without comment or discussion. This allows us to save time for other items that need more of our attention. However, I want to encourage members to be judicious in adding any items to the consent calendar and to be mindful of any items that may warrant discussion for the benefit of our stakeholders and the general public who are with us today in the audience or tuning in online. Of course, any board member can request that an agenda item be removed from the consent calendar as well. That gives us the opportunity to discuss it fully later in the meeting. Does any board member want to add or remove any items from the consent calendar? If not, do I hear a motion to approve this? David makes the motion. Janelle seconds it. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we will now move on to agenda item 4, our major policy discussion. In anticipation of the upcoming 2015 legislative session, a panel of higher education leaders will offer their perspectives and insights regarding higher education priorities for the 84th Texas Legislature. They will also discuss how we can all work together across sectors to best achieve serve our students and our state. We appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today and for sharing your perspectives and insights regarding the upcoming legislative session. Our panelists include Chancellor Irma Johnson Hadley of Tarrant County College. She was invited. She will not be able to make it today. Chancellor Brenda Hellier. Come on up, Brenda. San Jacinto College will graciously present on Chancellor Johnson Hadley's behalf. Chancellor Hellier has combined both presentations. Also, Brian McCall, Chancellor of the Texas State University System. Welcome, Chancellor McCall. And Michael Reeser, Chancellor of the Texas State Technical College System, also will be joining us. Michael, welcome. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. We're very pleased to see you. Brenda, you don't get paid twice for doubling up.
Okay. All right. Well, first,
Irma does want to send her regrets. She had an emergency that came up that she needed to deal with this week, and so I'll be giving some perspectives from her. We both talked about items, and will that be coming up also?
Coming up now.
Okay, all right. So you have handouts, and you have a copy of the PowerPoint that we had sent. And so first of all, on here, I want to give you a little overview of Tarrant County College and San Jacinto College. I also want to then talk to you about community college enrollments in Texas, and then our legislative agenda. Tarrant County Community College is located in Tarrant County, Fort Worth, and they have 5 major campuses, health profession campuses, and 4 satellite centers. Their enrollment on an annual basis is right at 100,000 students. And you can see this point, about 1 out of every 19 Tarrant County citizens enrolls in a course at Tarrant County College, which is pretty impressive. They're the 6th largest community college in Texas, and you can also see what they offer with about 80 different programs. One of the things you'll find from both of our colleges, our boards, they are elected, as you know, but they are very committed to our student success agenda. We talk about access and success, and I've seen the Tarrant County Board in action. They're very focused on the student success agenda and lead by example. They have a strategic plan that's clearly focused on student success, and they also have a student success agenda item on each one of their board agendas. They have a person from their board who's working on their core team for their Achieving the Dream, which is a national initiative, again, focused on student success, removing barriers. And they have a lot of recognition across the nation on the work that they're doing. How are they really looking at access and success? It's really taking a holistic approach at their campuses, fostering a college-going culture, preparing college-ready students, and working very, very closely with their ISDs. And one of the things in talking with Irma, she wanted to make sure you realized the impact that House Bill 5 has had with her in working with her school districts and being able to really work with that collaboration on how we work on alignment. The different examples they gave about removing barriers are related, again, to this holistic approach. The Crowley South Campus Center is designed for getting students in earlier, giving them opportunities, really looking at career and technical education dual credit. Generation Hope is a laptop program for middle school kids. They have about 300 students where they're trying to help them expand technology. They have 5 early college high schools. And then the college articulation agreements. For San Jacinto College, we're located in the heart of Petrochem and Maritime. I call it good fortune with everything that's going on right now. We have about $32 billion worth of expansion going on in our region for Petrochem. And it's a little different in Houston. We have our community colleges we are focused, we're formed by our school districts. So I have 6 school districts in my taxing area and 1 additional one in my service area. And there are 9 community colleges in that Houston area. My enrollment right now is 28,000. That's my certified number. About 75% of my students are part-time. They continue to get more part-time. That number continues to increase. If you add up the enrollment at my campus, it's over 28,000 because students go back and forth. We have a lot of late start classes, and so right now I have about 30,000 students on my campus, plus another 10,000 that are being trained through workforce training. One of the things on our enrollment is that our enrollment has declined. I'm down head count about 350 students, and my contact hours are down a little bit more, about 3%. And again, I think it's attributable to the economy in Houston. I can look at the ranges. My non-traditional student enrollment is where I've had the declines. And my high school, my 17 and under, is up about 1,000 students, but then with offsetting with those other declines. Another impact on my enrollment is most likely the downward expansion of the University of Houston Clear Lake. And so we're working on that data also. But again, to be down about 350 students with the kind of economy we have, I'm not too concerned about that, but we're continuing to work through it. Student characteristics, we are becoming much more Hispanic population. We're 49.2%. We grew about 3% in our Hispanic population. And again, a younger we're much younger because of our growth in our 17 and under. For us, completion is everything. My board is focused on student success and completion, and we have started a public campaign at the college about 4 or 5 years ago around what's the value of our credentials and have we really been pushing that. And so right now, the awards for this year were 4,794. I think that'll reach 5,000 as we're going through our certifications and also our reverse articulation. We were over 5,000 last year. In 2007, 2008, our total degrees and certificates were at 2,700. So just so you see that kind of growth, again, I think it's a real emphasis at our college. So community college enrollments across Texas, about 710,000 students, 53% of the students in public higher education. You can again see the diversity, about 36.4% Hispanic, 39.1% Anglo. And we are one of the highest producers of nurses. About 60% of all registered nurses come through our programs, 85% of first responders, and our number of awards in all areas have doubled since 2000. For the legislative session, the 83rd session was an important session for us. We had a new funding model adopted. You're going to hear about that later because we want to maintain that same funding model. But we brought in performance funding around a student success model. We also have an agreement that was reached around our employee benefits. Employee benefits were an issue for us for probably 25 years, and so we were able to reach a cost-sharing model. And then there, with the House Bill 5, again, we saw that as a success for us and able to really work through our collaborations with our K through 12 partners. For this 84th session, we have put one agenda together. That's how community colleges work. There's 50 of us. We operate through the Texas Association of Community Colleges. That's where all the presidents come together and work. And then we also have CCAT. And CCAT is our Community College Association of Texas Trustees. And so all of the trustees, about 350 across the state, are part of this organization. As we put together our legislative agenda, it is really based on the trustees and the presidents coming together with one agenda. And then also the coordinating board has been a critical player for us in making sure that we're in alignment. And that was one of the successes of the 83rd session, was the alignment between the coordinating board and the community colleges. And I want to thank the commissioner for that in really helping us make sure that we were addressing the issues together. So our 5-point plan has these components, and I'm going to go into each one of them. You also, in your packet, had a detailed write-up about each one of those, and I'm just going to kind of give you the highlights as I go through. So the first one is workforce and skills alignment. About 29% of my students say they're in technical programs, and you see that across the colleges. And we're looking at how do we really continue to build workforce skills alignment. And an important component for us is our skills development funds. There were a lot of barriers moved out of that system over the last couple of years, but funding is critical. We just received a Skills Development Fund grant for our maritime program, and those employers were just chomping at the bit to get that funding to help them do the workforce training. And as you talk to community colleges, the skills development funds are really critical. Another component are the JET program funds, and those are really allow us to buy equipment for high demand programs or technical programs. And so again, our first initiative is to keep the funding for those and possibly enhance them. A policy statement is around bachelor's degrees. And again, we read the recommendations out of the RAND report. We've read what the coordinating board has put together. And we really want a process developed for community colleges that have a demonstrated need in their region to have the opportunity to offer bachelor degrees. For my college, I'm interested in the Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I have had that interest for several years, and I'd also be interested in the Bachelor of Applied Technology. Again, both of those are based on the need in the region. And there's some interesting challenges around that. With having 9 community colleges in the Houston area, how do you monitor that? How do you make sure who would get that? And so the system, the process is very important around that. Our second point of our 5-point plan is measuring and funding student success. The funding we're requesting is $2.011 billion. And that is an amount that we worked through with the coordinating board, and then also Irma was on the formula funding committee on that. And so that's the funding request. We want to continue with the funding model, and I'll give you a diagram of that in just a second. And then we were charged with putting together an allocation of our student success points for the future based on each community college competing against themselves. And so we've worked with the coordinating board and various presidents, institutional researchers, and registrars around that. The model we have are $50 million goes into core operations. So each community college district would get $1 million per biennium. Then the remaining is 10% into our student success point funding and 90% into our contact hour funding. These are the student success points that we have were put together last session. We spent quite a bit of time going through other models from other states, but we really looked at what is the work that we do, what's the mission of a community college, and how do we move our students along the pathway. I have my admissions policy is I take 100% of who applies, and so how do I help them through those pathways? And so you'll see there's different points for developmental education, getting them through college level math and reading, and then also as they get 15 credits, 30 credits, and certificates and associate degrees and transfers. There's points along this continuum that don't have a blue arrow associated with them. They were points that we said we wanted to look at for in the future for funding. ABE, ESL, and GED are areas that we're very interested in, but ABE, there's not adequate funding, and so can we really measure the impact? GED, again, is one of those areas where I think we need more work. And then on the far side of the curve is high-demand workforce and employment. And again, trying to work through how we would really measure that consistently. I do want to say on the student success points, I want to thank the coordinating board staff who has worked with us. The first thing we did in trying to pull together the measures was making sure how we were reporting items, how we made sure that each community college was putting it on the same CBM form, how that was getting reflected in the coordinating board, and the staff has really helped us dig into that data. And so we have a chart now that each community college can actually look at. This is how you report this information, this is the form, and this is how it comes out. The coordinating board has allowed my staff to help test some of that data. To make sure how it flows from system to system. We now have a program that all community colleges can test their data, and that's been critical. There's always comments, whose data is it? And it starts with us largely in most of the pieces, but there's other pieces the coordinating board has to add to that. And so we've wanted to have that piece about how do you really put the testing into it. Our third point is college readiness. In the last session, we received funding for a new Mathways project that is redesigning math. College algebra isn't necessarily the only math pathway that's necessary. There's also StatWays that could be done or QuantWays. And so we've been working with all 50 community colleges with the Dana Center in designing that system. We're piloting, and then we're expanding the pilot this year into other community colleges. Every community college district is part of the plan. And so while there was a certain group that tested, there's another group that's been added on for capacity this year, and then a third group for capacity as we continue to develop. Community colleges also put funding into this. Each one of us receives an assessment, and so we'd like additional funding from the state to continue that work. We also have a really good approach going with our four-year universities around how does this fit into transfer options. Not that we've worked through all the details, but the conversations are being had right now, and so we continue to believe this is important work. I mentioned House Bill 5 earlier. That's a policy statement for us. Under House Bill 5, we hope there aren't significant changes this year. We've got momentum going. Everything that I hear is around collaboration, working more closely with our ISD partners, working on alignment, expanding some of the offerings that we have, and everything is about rigor and making sure that we're continuing that. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of work's been done over the past 9 months, but how do we keep building on that and being able to not have a start and stop right now? And then our next one is transfer and articulation. On my slide that I had earlier about my number of degrees, I also said I had about 4,900 students that transferred. And so transfer is an important component of the work that community colleges do. And all community colleges use a common course numbering system so that if it's English 1301, it transfers and we're all using the same thing. There's inconsistency between our university partners and the common course numbering. And we feel that this, if we all went to common course numbering, that this could help clear up some of the barriers that our transfer students have and help to reduce courses that have to be retaken. There's courses that are in our academic guide, which are at the lower level, that are also in the higher level academic guide. Well, are they lower level or are they higher level? And if a student takes them at a community college, they may have to retake them at a four-year university. And so how do we address this? Models that we've looked at are Florida and Mississippi because they have stronger transfer programs than what it appears that the state of Texas has. And then our last item is around providing sufficient funding for adult basic education. From our numbers, the funding provides only support for about 100,000 Texans when in fact there's about 3 million that are eligible. There's been a lot of changes around the adult basic education, and so we're working through that system now, but it really does come into a capacity issue. And then the last item is around Texas Education Opportunity Grants. That funding is now designated for community college students. And the one issue that we wanted to make sure was that we continue to fund that and Texas grants in alignment. It's really important that we don't let the funding for TEOG fall behind and that we continue to have that kind of funding available for our students. Okay, that was our agenda. And I don't know how you want to do questions, but I'm open for any.
Members, any questions at this point? Mr. Steen?
Thank you, Chancellor. On the common course numbering, that seems to make common sense. So where's the resistance to that? And while you were talking about it, I saw Chancellor Reeser nodding his head. I know, but help me understand that why there's even an issue there.
My understanding, and I don't want to necessarily speak for the four-year universities, but is from their standpoint and maybe some issues being dealt with throughout their organizations. It's a big move. It's a costly move, and so how does that really impact the universities in moving through their systems?
So it's cost? Is the problem?
I don't know if it's cost or what other parts of the university systems that they have to work through to make that kind of a change.
Mr. Chairman, would it be all right if Chancellor Reeser addresses that?
Well, I can tell you our system, as you recall, is a two-year system, just like the community colleges. And so I believe what Brenda is saying is the universities are having some logistical issues with the notion of a common course. And so it might be better for the universities to address your question.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Chancellor McCall.
I can only speak for the Texas State University system. We would be interested in this as well, provided all universities in Texas do the same. It needs to be everybody on the same page.
So this is not the first time or the second time or the third time that we've heard this. So when are we going to do it, and what do we need to do it? Do we need to go to the legislature and get additional funding? Do we need a mandate from the legislature? I'm all ears. I mean, it seems, as
Our request
Don
is
said, it seems very logical, and I just don't understand why we can't get there.
from the community college legislative agenda. Our request is basically a mandate. And again, there's a lot of politics involved with that, but that's how we would work through it, is with a mandate, and I think just as Chancellor McCall said, that all systems be forced to go on to that. when the community colleges went to Common Course numbering, we did it on our own. But we operate a lot differently. I mean, to come forward with one legislative agenda is different, too. And so, from our perspective, a mandate seems to be the way to address it.
Is that how Florida did it?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Otto?
Thank you. So if we are having a challenge in Common Course numbering, and you were suggesting that it could be very expensive in terms of syncing them together, what would take if how we look at the European sizes and the American sizes in terms of shirts or shoes or whatever, and then you have a little metric saying this shirt means this number here? And can we get it through that way? Number one. Number two, you were suggesting here that the community colleges and the public universities, how about the private universities also? How do they do the common course numbering?
They would need to have the same system. And my
Right now
understanding...
we're having three systems? Private, public, and community colleges?
The private colleges also operate in the academic course manual, and I would think but what can happen is you can have courses that are in the lower level that are also in the higher level. And so is a course such as organic chemistry, we teach that. It has a certain number, but it's also in the higher level. And so are they the same course or not? I think we have to have decisions around some of those kinds of things, and that's how the private colleges use those same kind of manuals.
So are the universities concerned about the quality of the courses and the student getting what they need in order to move forward? Let's just kind of...
There's not a unanimous embracing of this idea amongst the four-year systems.
Right. Sounds like we're kind of in a touchy situation here, huh?
Well,
Okay.
Harold, keep in mind, I mean, the coordinating board has put a group together and done what I think is tremendous amounts of work in this area, but this is an iceberg. This is a very large subject when you dig into it that's not going to be fixed overnight. I think it's important
to bear in mind. I think everybody recognizes that this is an issue. I've talked to a number of university presidents about this issue, and it is very much a cost issue and the amount of work involved, because you're talking about aligning thousands of courses at big public universities. It's an enormous amount of work, and the work has to be continuous. It has to be updated because courses change, majors change. Courses disappear, new courses are created, and you have to undergo this process regularly. Otherwise, your common course numbering system would be obsolete within a matter of 3 to 5 years. So I think the concern is, are we going to have the resources to make this viable on a continuing basis?
Other comments? It always, I'm a little bit in awe because at the community college you deal with everything from adult basic ed to associate's degrees to technical training to preparing kids to go to a 4-year university. So you've got to keep a lot of balls in the air.
That's right.
So we very much appreciate that effort.
Thank you.
Chancellor McCall, are you next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Welcome.
Great to be with you to talk about what's coming in the legislative session. I'm optimistic about it, notwithstanding that. In 232 days, the Texas legislature will adjourn sine die. I have that marked on my calendar as well. I want to thank you for your service to the state of Texas and for all those things that you do that I agree with.
Which is rare.
If I
Can you move
may.
your microphone just a little closer, Chancellor?
Yes. And if at any time you want me to move it farther away, I'll do that as well. If I may.
What is that one thing that you're grateful for?
There are many. If I may talk just briefly about the Texas State University system, because the things that I want to highlight correspond with what we want in the legislative session and how they tie together. The Texas State University system is the oldest university system in Texas. It's the third largest behind the University of Texas system and the A&M system. We've been educating Texans for the same amount of time that Chevrolet has been making cars. And we have not had any recalls that I'm aware of degrees. We have 8 component institutions, 4 universities, 1 upper division, 2-year school, and 3 state colleges. Our enrollment's about 81,000 students. And in fact, our enrollment over the past 10 years is up 34%. In that same time, there have been no tuition revenue bonds. Our faculty teaches 17% more semester credit hours than the state average. Our tuition is 14% below the state average, and 80% of our students are working within a year of graduation or in graduate school, by far the leader in the state of all university systems. I would like to talk about some of the things that you have wanted us to do that fit your goals that we have accomplished in 4 years. In the past 4 years, our enrollment is up 10%. Our graduation rate in 4 years is up 10%. Our online degree programs in 4 years are up 110%. Our online credit hours are up in 4 years 210%. The degrees awarded system-wide in 4 years are up 14%. Degrees in critical fields, science, engineering, and math in 4 years, up 27%. Doctoral degrees completed in 4 years, up 142%. And our universities are funded at the bottom of the 38 universities. Sam Houston and Texas State, I believe, are 36 and 37 in their funding. We're literally doing more with less with better result than most university systems in the nation. We would like to do more with more. Of the 52 university systems in the United States, we're the 19th largest and one of the fastest growing. Tuition revenue bonds is our top priority. We have 5 top priorities. The average square foot per student in our system is 27% less than the state average. According to you, the coordinating board, we have a 2 million square foot space deficit. That's the size of the San Marcos Outlet Mall and the Austin Convention Center combined. We are turning away students that in programs that we would love to admit because we just have no place to teach them. We have a classroom in biology at Lamar University that has 800 students a year go through the one classroom. We've not had a new academic building at Lamar University in 40 years, and it's one of the fastest growing universities in the nation. That biology building, which is 50 years old, I just took the speaker through yesterday, 2 days ago, because it speaks for itself. It's like a movie set from many years ago. And yet, Lamar University admission rate to medical school is twice the national average. So we are doing more with less. Tuition revenue bonds, for that reason, is what I want to talk to you first about. HEAF funding ties in with tuition revenue bonds. The HEAF funds are recalibrated, as you know, every 10th year. This is the 10th year. The 2 times it's been recalibrated, it was recalibrated up once 75% and the second time up 50%. We would certainly agree that the number that the coordinating board has thrown out as a goal should be, we would be happy for that to be our minimum goal. Hazelwood funding. We're a very veteran-friendly system. We advertise that we want veterans. And we will continue doing it, notwithstanding that strategy has hurt us, in that our Hazelwood funding is up 60% in 2 years. Texas State University is, and Sam Houston in particular, are feeling the brunt of it. Texas State, I believe, has the highest number of Hazelwood grants, only behind A&M. Formula funding, we love the fact that we have formula funding in the state, and we love that the coordinating board is asking for an increase of $265 million, which we support as a minimum as well. And Texas grants, your recommendation, we support as a minimum as well. And with regard to your outcome-based funding outside of the formula, an increase of $235 million new dollars, we're performing at those levels and believe it will work to our advantage in a significant way to support this recommendation. Be happy to answer any easy questions.
But what are you doing about Common Course numbering? Members, questions? Yes.
Well, thank you for that excellent presentation, Chancellor McCall. I just want to say that, excuse me, I was honored to have served as a regent before your time. And I will tell you that you've come a long way. So it's really great. Another thing I want to say about the community colleges is the college readiness importance. I am a product of an adult, a mother, full-time worker, starting my career, my education in a community college. And I will tell you, I never really worried about the numbering or what it was. English 101 was English 101 to me when I took it at the junior college and then transferred very well to Sul Ross State University. But I know the problems are there. I hear it from our younger students. But one of the things that I see that is doing so well, especially in our community, I come from Del Rio, Texas. And the dual crediting, our students being able to go to taking college courses while they're in high school and graduating with almost an AA and saving their parents thousands of dollars that they really could not afford when they have to go into a four-year college. So for all of you that are doing that and working with the independent school districts, I applaud you because that's where the need is. So thank you.
Dr. Tesher?
So, Chancellor, congratulations on doing more and more excellently with less. Clearly, it would seem to me that the opportunity for growth in higher education in our state, at least at the four-year level, is within a system such as yours. And if you had adequate funding and knowing where your presidents are and your board is, what kind of enrollment growth could we expect from your system, say 4 years from now? If you had the means to do that, what would you be able to do? Because we understand our flagship universities are tapped out. There's no more room for enrollment growth there. We need enrollment growth. And I think we as a coordinating board would like some insight on where is that enrollment growth going to happen and what resources do we need to help you get to be able to do that.
Well, I thank you, and I think your conclusion is bang on. The growth will occur in a system like ours. Let me give you one example of what a tuition revenue bond would allow us to do. At Texas State University, we had something like 26,000 applicants for 4,000 entering class. We have a campus of 101 acres in Round Rock. We're trying to get a TRB to build a building in Round Rock. When we can get the adequate buildings in Round Rock, we can shift 3,500 students from San Marcos, all allied health, to that campus, which frees up for growth of 3,500 in San Marcos. The ratio that I mentioned for applicants to admissions is exactly the same, though the numbers are different at Sam Houston. And Lamar just raised its academic entry standards fairly considerably and yet took the largest freshman class. So the growth is coming. Sul Ross just had its largest freshman entering class this year as well. So the growth is coming to us, but our hands are tied because of places with a 2 million square foot space deficit, according to you. that's a problem.
Yeah.
Chancellor, so I feel that you don't have to build buildings to have growth in enrollment. What are you doing for building enrollment, online infrastructure for those sorts of non-traditional students, building for the future, competency-based education? Bricks and mortar are really not the future for classrooms. So are you exploring other opportunities?
Yes, we're doing more than any university system in Texas and more than most university systems in the nation, with online degree programs up 210% in 4 years, all the way to the doctorate degree. But we're training engineers, and you can't train engineers without a building. And you have to have a specific kind of building, and you have to have specific laboratories. And a lot of what we do cannot be done online. But yes, I agree with you, and our actions speak as loud as the words I'm telling you today. We're doing both.
And then I also read about a medical school for Sam Houston. You want to talk about that?
That's a long way away, and there's a lot of work to be done prior to any intelligent discussion taking place. The community in Montgomery County and Sam Houston have been in discussions about some land donations for that to occur. I believe the president of Sam Houston has an appointment to meet with Commissioner Paredes soon to discuss steps that must be taken. But when we get our ducks in a row, we'll be coming to you to ask for permission to do that. But I think that is later than sooner.
Thank you.
Chancellor, you indicated your enrollment was up 10%, online classes 110%. I mean, you just go down the litany, and it seems to be a success story. Other than fantastic leadership, what would you attribute that to? Is there?
I'd like to leave it at that, but since you asked, and when I say fantastic leadership, I'm referring to the presidents of the institutions. We have fantastic leadership on our campuses, but as Dr. Tischer pointed out, we have caps at A&M and caps at Texas. They're taking the top 8 or so %, and they're capped at a certain number. And the geography of San Marcos and the geography of Sam Houston and what they have done, those caps have inured to the benefit of those two schools particularly.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, Chancellor Reeser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to refer to the written material that I provided earlier this week and let you know that that's kind of the central theme of what my remarks will be today. As opposed to focusing merely on TSDC, I want to talk about technical ed in general. And frankly, it's beneficial to the chancellor sitting at the table with me in terms of what my comments will be aimed at. I don't have to tell you that higher ed has a lot of different purposes. I mean, preparing people for citizenship in a democracy, exposing them to conventional wisdoms and enriching the soul are all noble and appropriate and valuable reasons. But at TSTC and among all the technical educators in Texas, there is another reason that we tend to focus primarily on, and that is we prepare people for a great career. In fact, I'll argue that an ennobled soul without a good job is a light under a bushel basket, because his ability and her ability to contribute in the culture is stunted. So if I could, I'd like to show you some information that I think could inform the strategic process that y'all are working on right now. And so I'll tell you, here we are in HB5, in post-HB5. that was a major step forward for us in Texas education. It was huge. And for years, we'll see the benefits of what that are. But here's some of the stuff that I think contributed to HB5 and why HB5 is not the answer to where we should be. It's indeed the inauguration of where we should go. And so I'll let you read this slide. We have a skills gap in Texas. It's real. It reflects the same skills gap we see across the nation. It's one that we didn't mean to happen, but it's with us nonetheless. I'm going to show it to you. The top set of bars are the high skills workforce versus the jobs that are available. This is Texas. We're doing a great job of producing baccalaureates and above. Closing the Gaps works. It was a highly successful program. And as you consider the successor to that, I hope my comments will help you there. The low skill, the bottom bars, those are the unemployed that we all know. This is generally those who have attained a high school degree or less. We're well aware of that situation. But one that a lot of folks, unless you're a businessman who hires a lot of middle skills workers, you may not be aware of those middle bars. We have a huge shortage of qualified workers. Now, these are jobs that produce high salaries. Brenda, for example, and I, and LIT does too, produces instrumentation technicians that go to work in refineries and chemical plants that typically start in the $60,000 and $70,000 a year range, and within 5 years can make six figures with a 2-year credential. Indeed, there are tons of 2-year credentials that consistently out-earn a Master of Arts. And these data show you that. So, in addition to the skills gap, we have a supply gap. These are COBORD data. The blue line is a line of best fit on the growth we've had in the past 12 years on gen ed classes in the 2-year sector. This is a result of closing the gaps. It's working. It is a fabulous program. But what's happened is the technical and the green and the red are technical and allied health in the 2-year sector. And you can see they're roughly flat. The growth rate in technical and allied health is 1/3 or less the growth rate in the gen ed. So not only do we have a skills gap, but we have a supply gap too. So here's my argument to you today. Let's focus on technical ed. Let's make sure that in the strategic plan that comes out of the deliberations that are going on right now includes a healthy opportunity for higher ed to close the supply gap and for Texans to be aware of the skills gap and the great jobs that are a result of that. Here's our challenge that I put down here. We lead the nation in job creation, but we still have a skills gap. And I'll tell you, without action, this gap is going to get worse before it gets better. It'll get worse because we're not supplying, we aren't producing enough supply now. It'll also get worse because of the graying workforce in this skilled economy. If you own a business, you know that your skilled technicians are probably aged 50 or older. So the supply coming in is insufficient right now. This will become a crucial problem that'll hold Texas's economy back in the future if we don't get busy. So we need a coordinated plan. Brenda can't solve this by herself. Brian can't solve this by herself. TSTC can't solve this by ourselves. It's going to take all of us to make this a priority. Here's some of the suggestions. Now, I'm an educator. I'm not a policy guy. But I'll offer to you, here's some ideas. These aren't all mine. They're great. Commissioner Preta's, some of these I stole from him. These are ideas that we've seen gone on. The first is make technical fields a priority. talk about the fact that going to college doesn't just mean getting a law degree or a bachelor's in communications. It can also mean getting an associate's degree in a STEM field that's going to produce a fabulous salary. Here's some of the things we could do. Make sure that we define college as the broad range that it truly is. When we say to Texas kids, go to college, make sure we help them understand that's more than just a bachelor's degree. The industry partners that employ these really skilled people will join us. They will be happy to be involved, but they're not going to do it on their own. They're going to do it if we can develop a statewide plan. ISD and gateway people training. I was fortunate enough to attend a meeting that Commissioner Paredes invited me to recently that include higher ed leaders and also ISD leaders. And we talked about the fact that those in secondary ed aren't well trained, haven't been provided the information they need to help kids know what HB5 pathways can lead to in their career. So a way in which we could improve that. Chancellor, Brenda already, calling you formally is tough for me, Brenda. Brenda talked about the JET funds. I'd also like to suggest that the Perkins funds, and the way in which they're allocated, we have an opportunity to say there are technologies that are more valuable for Texas than others. Perhaps we could consider a way to focus those resources toward the fields that Texas needs most, the ones that will hamper our continued economic viability. Increase the formula funding for tech. I mean, that's a simple one. It's so expensive to do technology, but the investment is worth it because the yield in salaries at the end is a huge economic engine for Texas. So if we're going to increase funding, how about we do it in tech, where it has a huge impact on our economy? Align the technical supply with jobs. TSDC this summer stood up a new curriculum alignment center called the C4EO. And I put the link there. You can go investigate it if you'd like. This was built on work done at the CoBoard, at the Workforce Commission. It involves the notion we've built on a syntax that creates or that has developed a lexicon of job skills that is easy to transfer back to curriculum learning outcomes. We've validated it through over 1,400 different industries, and we now have 22 Texas colleges that have joined in the effort to use this new process to align the learning outcomes in their courses with the actual skills needed in the workplace. We aren't guessing now. We're actually learning from industry the specific skills they need, and that is informing the curriculum. Competency-based. Fortunately, TSDC's was fortunate to be involved in developing that. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we got our letter from the Department of Ed saying that TSDC is the 4th college in the nation to qualify its competency-based curriculum for federal financial aid. So, thanks to Commissioner Paredes and his vision in terms of helping us prototype our competency-based, that result is because of your leadership, and we thank you. We think that has the opportunity to help veterans, to help adult learners, to be a more efficient and effective way to apply higher ed principles to workforce-needed skills. And then finally, and this is my beseeching you, consider developing a statewide effort. If y'all don't do it, who would? Commissioner Paredes and the other commissioners, Alcantar and Williams, meet on a regular basis. This could be the genesis of a statewide effort that includes other policymakers, lawmakers, and others to create a statewide template of prosperity in terms of this. The impact could be immense. So, that's my beseeching of you. There are lots of templates available, by the way. The nationalskillscoalition.org is a great place to start. They have proven, they've studied all 50 states. They've identified a bunch of best practices. There are opportunities for us to join together across Texas to address this problem. So, what I've offered to you today is certainly something that would benefit TSTC. I admit that. But it would likewise benefit Chancellor McCall's system and Brenda's system too, no doubt. In fact, that's not really the point. The point is that Texas has an opportunity to not just maintain our economic miracle, but to actually build on it. And I propose a constraining variable is in higher ed, but it's not just go to college, it's go to the right kind of college for the workplace that we're going to see in the future. And so I beseech you to consider taking a leadership role in that. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Chancellor. Questions?
Here. Can you back up a slide?
Yes, sir.
So let's look at your first and last. We have a program. It already exists. Mm-hmm. The only thing that doesn't exist is there's nothing about industrial arts on our website. It's not an emphasis. It's not a focus. And I'm going to ask you, like I ask everyone else that's involved in this, including employers, can we please create some content for exactly these types of technical training, technical fields, put it on our website, use it, make it a focus for the future. I completely agree with what you're saying. There's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of employers that can't find the qualified people that they need. There's a lot of people, maybe even mid-career, dead-end jobs that might be able to benefit from this, not just the young people, but certainly we need to fill the hopper with those in that regard. But on our GenTX website, there's nothing at all about this. Now, there's a lot of middle-income types of jobs. Teaching, healthcare, nursing, legal, dentistry, accounting, those are all there, but none of the industrial arts are there. So would you please help us gather the other stakeholders in this, put that content on there, and help us use that to drive exactly what you're asking?
Bob, I'll take it a step further. I volunteered TSTC to do the first draft and put it up there for you.
Thank you so much for being here today. I did like exactly what you were saying about collaboration. And part of the board's work this year was looking at the RAND report and the opportunity for community colleges with bachelor's degrees. But our goal was to really have more collaboration between the universities and the community colleges. I'm fairly aware of what Tarrant County is doing, but is San Jacinto reaching out to the universities to maybe bring on-site so that your students have this smooth transition into a university program and they can finish on-site there? Or and Chancellor, as Texas State had that opportunity to work with the community colleges, and it's another way to expand, but it's also a way to keep students in the program.
Yes. My largest feeder is the University of Houston Clear Lake, and I have been their largest feeder into their system also. We have a very clear transfer path. They have preferred our students have the associate degrees, and then they come in with transfer scholarships that are available to all of our students coming in. And on the nursing program, 2 years ago we sat down and talked because we knew we needed to have a pathway for our students. And so we have a 3+1 where basically San Jacinto College is offering 3 years of the program, and University of Houston Clear Lake was able to get a BSN approved. And so we have clear pathways that way. For us, it becomes even more capacity. Our second largest feeder is University of Houston, Maine, and the University of Houston system has created a P through 20, really looking again at these barriers around articulation issues, around how do we look at things differently and make it easier for our students. My third one is A&M, and then also UT Austin, and then my fifth transfer largest one is University of Houston downtown. Stronger partnerships with the U of H systems, but we have been involved with President Powers on some of his work with the University of Houston or University of Austin around taking away those barriers and how we can expand some different things. But each one of those takes negotiating agreements, and that becomes very, very cumbersome. We're working with Baylor right now on their Baylor Bound program, and we're excited about that. I also want to talk about the industrial arts that you mentioned. I had said our area has $32 billion in expansion going on right now, and that is all petrochem. What I have seen in our area is a real emphasis of business and industry, community colleges, universities, and the ISDs. And we have East Harris County Manufacturers, which represents about 120 plants in my area. And this is an initiative where industry from East Harris County Manufacturers, community colleges are going into the school districts. We're talking with counselors, we're talking with parents, and we're talking with students. And we are really educating them on the jobs. And each one of the jobs has a clear pathway. This is what you need to do in high school, this is what you need to do in a community college, and where that can continue to grow. The excitement in our area, haven't seen this. I've been in the area about 25 years. I've never seen this around these kind of jobs before. It's helping drive enrollment in those areas. It's helping us also get support so we can do infrastructure additions. I've expanded welding 3 times over the last year in order to accommodate. And so those partnerships are powerful. And what Mike was talking about, the statewide, I think there's models like that we could definitely look at on how do we expand them. Because we're part of the Upskill Houston with the Greater Houston Partnership. And again, it is building this across the region. We have to with the number of jobs that are needed right now.
So I would agree with Brenda that the Upskill Houston model is actually a really, really good one that brings together the various stakeholders that would be required to systemically fix the pathways for students.
So as you're partnering with the local school districts, what is the grade level that you're targeting that these students would be first introduced to the idea that there's higher education and jobs that doesn't involve a bachelor's degree?
We started last year focusing first on high school because we were trying to drive enrollment in that particular area. We've taken it down to 8th graders because they're doing testing in 8th grade and then they start to need to look at their career track. We're also, our East Harris County Manufacturers with Junior Achievement is doing a career fair, and it's designed for about 8,000 students in my area, and then Lee College, and then over in the Spring Branch area. So they're driving that. And then in 6th grade, they're also starting where they bring them in for science exposure. And so I'll have about 8,000 6th graders on campus in March to expose them to science and how it ties back to these jobs. So we've really tried to take it back into much earlier. And probably what we'll be doing for 7th grade is how we help support those ISD teachers around doing experiments, again, being able to reconnect. But it started initially high school, back down to 8th grade and 6th grade.
If I may add on to Brenda's comments, you know, Brenda is famous in the 2-year sector as being an exemplar of innovation. She is really, really a great system. And their Houston model is very good. It needs to be because Houston is one of the cities that really has a skills gap problem. But you can't generalize that kind of exemplary performance to all of Texas. And the argument I'm making is that we need a statewide effort that's coordinated across all the colleges and not just Brenda's exceptionally good example. Let's take her best practices and spread them across the state.
Chris?
What you were just talking about, I'm curious, was this part of HB 5 that created the opportunity to go in and do what you've done?
That's where industry saw how they wanted to get connected. Texas Chemical Council was very involved with House Bill 5, and that's where all these plants are part of. And so that was really, I think, the initiative that got them excited. To be honest, in 2008, when we were trying to have conversations around this, industry in my area was having declines. They were looking at going, to other countries. And so what has happened is a renaissance. And so House Bill 5 came at the right time where it really engaged them. And they are seeing, amazing expansion, but that retirement is the other piece that's scaring them. And we weren't able to have those conversations until this renaissance, but then House Bill 5 was the big driver.
Well, I just want to say thanks to all three of you. Very, very interesting. And Mike, your comment, I think, is straight on correct. If we do not fix the skills gap, we are going to have an economic problem, because we're going to have the jobs and the need, but we're not going to be able to fill them. It's going to be a problem. It's probably already a problem. If you're in my business and you're hiring, it's a problem. So thank you very much. Great presentation.
Raymond?
Well, I wanted to also thank all of you for your compelling presentations. The challenge we have is to work across three sectors simultaneously, and Mike, I certainly, as you pointed out, I've been very supportive of career technical education and what you're doing in the technical colleges. But it is an either-or situation. We have shortages in baccalaureate areas, and we have to work on those. Another issue, and we're about to receive a final report on this issue on marketable skills across the curriculum. It's not so much a question of we're overproducing baccalaureates. We are underproducing baccalaureate recipients who know what their marketable skills are, and we have to work on that. And there's some problems with the workforce data that don't clearly identify job opportunities for majors, particularly in the humanities and the arts. For example, how do you determine the job prospects or the workforce areas for a philosophy major or sociology major? And sometimes those, because there isn't an easy niche for those students, they get lost in the way the Texas Workforce Commission counts how many people we need in particular fields. We're continuing to work on the transfer issue. We have people, David Gardner and I talk about this issue regularly. We are aware of the university's position on a common course numbering system. We understand the community college's position as well. We're trying to look at different ways of getting at this issue. David Gardner has pointed out any number of times that if we simply used the fields of study areas more effectively, that would take care of a lot of transfer issues. If we had institutions focus on the core curriculum more closely, that would take care of a lot of transfer issues. So we have to address those first. We have to do a better job of making certain that students have opportunities to take CTE courses in high school. It's very important to emphasize that while CTE is expanding and the skilled workforce is expanding, most of those jobs will require post-secondary training, and you're clearly pointing that out. Our position among the staff at the coordinating board has been that we want students to get a solid academic foundation in high school so that when they change their minds about what they want to do with their lives, and inevitably they will still have a strong enough foundation to make those changes from one emphasis to another without a significant amount of retraining and re-education. So I can tell you, Brian, I've been at Lamar, and I know how disparate the resources available to different institutions in Texas are. And I remember going to Lamar a couple of years ago, and there was still a lot of damage that hadn't been repaired as a result of the hurricane. And I expect that you haven't repaired everything. Well, I'm talking about some of the damage that it was still lingering and so forth. And I'm aware of that we have to make sure that we do a TRB bill this session. So we've got to put all these pieces together. There are great needs in every sector, and you all did a great job of articulating what you need in your particular areas. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. If I could build on what you just said, I hope I didn't leave the impression that I was anti-baccalaureate.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, most of my friends would be shocked to find I actually hold one, and I think it was the beginning of my success. But what I will say is I think that times are different than when I went to school. I remember my father's advice: I don't care what you take, just get a bachelor's degree. And the reason is, in those days, it was a fairly hard link between job success and a bachelor's degree. Today, but I paid $3 a credit hour at Texas A&M in those days, and so my parents who weren't well off could pay for it out of cash flow. Today, it's a different story, and when we look at return on investment, I think the efforts that we've begun to make through things like Generation Texas, the websites developed by Workforce Commission and others, where we inform students about the likelihoods of certain degree fields, I think those have to be continued to be built on, that we're headed in the right direction to allow students to make inferences about what particular fields of study may provide for them in their career field ahead. Will they be scientific and hardwired? Not always. But we could help those students who have an extremely expensive 4-year degree and no strong work prospects. We could minimize those numbers. So.
Very good. If there's no other questions, thank you all very much for your insight and your presentation, and we'll certainly take that into account. Thank you again.
Very much.
The next item on the agenda is recognition of excellence. Recognition of excellence is meant to showcase models of excellence within the education community and highlight the outstanding work of our faculty and administrators and institutional programs around our state. Our next speaker is Dr. M. Gene Keller, Professor of Kinesiology at the Health Promotion and Recreation at the University of North Texas. Dr. Keller will make a presentation on the Allied Health Pathways Program and their involvement in high-impact methods to improving academic access and success, along with diversifying physical therapy and related health science, professions. Welcome.
Thank you very much. We're delighted to be with you today, and I'd like to introduce my colleagues. On the end
Dr. Keller, could you move your microphone just a little bit closer?
Sure.
Thank you.
And make sure the red light is on.
Thank you, Dr. Paredes.
Much better.
Good morning. I'm Jean Keller. I'm with the University of North Texas, and we're delighted to be with you all this morning. I'd like to introduce my colleagues. On the far end is Sheila Gallagher. Sheila is our business partner with this project. She's a physical therapist and the CEO of True Care Solutions. And next to her is Christopher Vasquez, and Christopher is a student at the University of North Texas, preparing on his pathway to be a doctorate in physical therapy and to be a licensed physical therapist. Randall Williams is next to Chris, and Randall was started in the program, earned his master's degree at UNT, and now over at the UNT Health Science Center, and is the class president of the 2017 class for physical therapy. So we're very proud of both of those young men, and they'll have a chance to share a little bit of their success with you. And then next to me is Dr. Clayton Holmes, and Clayton is the founding department chair of the physical therapy program at the UNT Health Science Center. We have a few guests with us that are a part of this Pathways program from our 2-year institutions, and I'd like them to stand and be recognized. Dr. Archie Wilmore from Tarrant County. And I believe we have some colleagues from Weatherford. Great. So we'll give a short presentation and then have some opportunities for some dialogue.
Hello, my name is Randall. I'm a first-year Doctor of Physical Therapy student at the UNT Health Science Center in Fort Worth. And I want to briefly talk about why this grant's needed. In recent stats, can you hear me? Okay. So recent stats show that graduates of these professional physical therapy programs represent African American and Latinos of being representative less than 4%. And of that, less than 1% of those African American and Latinos are male.
So I'm Clayton. So it's good to be here. Thank you for having us. So obviously the question that we've had, I've been a physical therapist for 30 years now and been in PT education since '91 full-time. And how do we increase the number of underrepresented males in these professions? And particularly, obviously, today we're talking about physical therapy, but these numbers are similar for several professions. I'd like to briefly talk about our partners in a little more detail. We have both urban and rural two-year colleges that are partners. We have the University of North Texas is our four-year partner. That's where Dr. Keller is. She's our fearless leader, the principal investigator in the grant, and helped pull us all together. Of course, I'm at the University of North Texas Health Science Center, and True Care Solutions, who you'll hear a little more about, is our business partner, which has been a critical piece of this effort. I just want to say that I think I was starting a program in 2011 when Dr. Keller contacted me, and to be honest with you, I thought she was a little crazy because I was building a program, and we'd just taken our first class. But we have one of the great things about starting a program is you get to do things. As the founding chair, you kind of get to do things the way you've been envisioning them to do them. And one of the things I'd wanted to do, was a holistic admissions process. And so I believe that what Dr. Keller was talking about with regard to a pipeline really fit that holistic admissions process and helped us to. We look at many of our admissions variables as barriers. Some of them are good barriers, but some of them are bad barriers. And so that's kind of the way we looked at it. And there are many other barriers that occur before they get to physical therapy school, before they get to the application process. And we felt that this was just a wonderful way to help tear down these barriers.
Well, you see, we had an issue and we had an opportunity. And so our goal then was to take that issue of how do we diversify the allied health professions and make that an opportunity for our underrepresented males. We had to make them aware of the profession, and many of them were not aware of the professions that are in allied health and the opportunities of those career choices. Then we wanted a nice articulated pipeline so they could move through quickly and expeditiously and successfully. And that took creating an early academic success model. And we'll talk a little bit more about that early academic success model. And then we wanted to look a little bit, were there variations in the recruitment of minority males from our two-year institutions that were urban versus our rural institutions, which are in our North Texas region. So let's go on to the methodology, Clayton, and kind of share a little bit how we were doing that. It took quite a few touches to help us alert these underrepresented males to the opportunities because they'd never seen people that look like themselves in the profession. Physical therapists are not definitely people of color. And then the key with our Pathways model was to make sure that we recruited them into the areas and then we retained them and helped them be successful. And a little bit of that focused on academic interventions. Many of the allied health professions require GPAs, they require science, they require math, so we wanted those men to be ready and to be able to get into the profession. It took some mentoring, and we wanted them to be mentored by men. We wanted them to be mentored by men of color, if at all possible. We then felt like a dashboard would help them a little bit with knowing how they were doing and making progress, and we had that available for their advisors at the 2-year institutions, at the 4-year institutions, and also at our Health Science Center. The men then followed that pathway. They took advantage of some opportunities by going with our colleagues from the UNT Health Science Center to professional development meetings, some of those in the region, some of those in the state, and some of our men even had the opportunity to participate in national meetings. And then our wonderful experiential and clinical learning opportunity that was provided by TrueCare, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about how that solidified the men and wanting them to be professionals in the allied health careers when they found themselves putting on those scrubs and working with those patients and clients. And then one of the things that we did discover is that many of the men had not been through the admissions processes that were required for professional degrees, master's and doctoral degrees. And that took a little bit of increasing their knowledge, helping them understand the time periods to doing that. But doing those kinds of touch points, those high impact practices, has yielded wonderful results, and we've had some pretty good successes. Sheila?
Well, thank you for letting me be here. I'm actually represent the partner in this grant project, and I can tell you it's been an honor. I remember when it was casually mentioned to me by Dr. Holmes back before we were granted this project, and I didn't find him soliciting me. I found myself soliciting him if I could be a part of this. I'm actually an entrepreneur for 32 years. A native Texan. I've got the company that provides therapy across the state, mainly in Central and South. You know, our opportunity to treat over 2,000 patients a day has led me to try to make sure that I have the right workforce to make the most successful outcomes for those patients. When I find my patients' diversification, where over 50% of those patients are minorities, and I find my workforce the opposite in terms of maybe 30% minority, I'm not matching the right therapist with the patient that can have the most successful outcome. And for me, that's what I'm achieving and trying to achieve. I found myself going out of state 5 years ago to hire minority males, both Hispanic, African American, that were physical therapists. I'd love to see it happen in our state where I can hire native Texans out of our programs and find the quality men to help us with the patients to get the outcomes that we need to get.
I'm going to elaborate on what she provided us. It was the internship. It was a 10-week internship, a paid internship, which you never hear of. Never. Provided apartments in Houston, and we're all the way in Denton, so we just needed a car. We worked with therapists 5 days a week, was able to shadow him, understand his life and the hardships he went through, but also the good things, the people he worked with and things like that, how the group cohesion and everything worked with the other therapists. And being able to see that, before this program even I heard of it, I didn't even know what physical therapy was. And it introduced me. I'm personal training, and my grandma would help her with some exercise, and she called me her therapist, and I didn't know why. But this program really introduced me, and it gave me the confidence I needed to pursue a graduate or doctorate of physical therapy degree, that I know I can do it now. It wasn't knowledge in me. I didn't see it as realistic. So that's what this program has given to me.
Well, thanks, Sheila and Chris. I think you can see why we're pretty proud of this program. Let's just show you a little bit of the outcomes of the project using the pipeline that the coordinating board likes to use. We did have to make a number of touch points to help recruit the men that are in this program. We reached out to nearly 2,700 students of color and males to let them know about allied health pathways pathways in our 2-year institutions and in our 4-year institutions in the North Texas region. And our partners were very, very helpful in that process of helping make the men aware of allied health professions. Some of those men chose to come into physical therapy, others went into occupational therapy, some speech and hearing, and then some chose nursing because those programs were a little bit more convenient to home, especially in the rural areas with Ranger College. But we have 72 men in the program, and this is a program that just started 2 years ago, and we're very excited about that. 39 of those men have had clinical experiences, and I think you've heard from Sheila and Chris the importance of those clinical experiences where they were out there making a difference, seeing people that look like them, and seeing them being successful in those professions. We had a lot of peer mentoring that went on with these men, and they are at every point of touch. So some of our mentors, like Dr. Archie Wilmore, is at Tarrant County College, and Archie is a math professor, but a math professor of color, and he helps men know about these opportunities. So we have 97 mentors involved in this program. To date, we've had 13 earn associate degrees, 15 earned bachelor's degrees, 2 master's degrees, and 3 doctorates in physical therapy. So our pipeline is working, and we're very, very proud of that pipeline. We've had 4 men have different scholarships, and Sheila's modest. She provided a $25,000 scholarship to one of our men in the program, and that was not even a requirement of this project at all, but she saw what a difference it was making and provided that opportunity. We've had a total of 33 men graduate as a part of this pipeline program, and 3 of those men have earned their doctorates in physical therapy, passed their licensing on the first attempt, and are gainfully employed. So we're very, very proud of the men in the program. Clayton, want to take us home?
Well, I guess I want, before Randall and Chris talk again, because they're the real story, I just want to say that we're very committed to increasing the diversity of our profession. My faculty are very committed. As a matter of fact, my faculty, while have a level of diversity that's a little different, we're from 5 continents, but we are very committed to this pipeline and this pathway, but also to increasing diversity in our profession, and always have been. And we believe this is an amazing opportunity to do that. I'd also like to point out that Randall was recently voted class president by his colleagues, his peers, and so we have a number of significant positive outcomes to brag about. Randall?
So I'm in PT school, and I consider it my responsibility to help others negotiate through the incredibly difficult task of getting into PT school. It's incredibly competitive. And even after I become a PT, I still plan on being involved as a mentor and having that type of relationship with someone or anybody so that I can help, because it's my obligation to pay what I've received forward.
And my part of it, I'm applying to physical therapy school this coming year. And I still see myself, I'm getting mentored, but I'm also helping those that are about to apply and need a little more help on their GPA or looking at anything that they have to offer and trying to help build on that. I feel a sense of commitment to this program because of it.
Sheila?
Well, I guess for me, education, access to education for physical therapy for me, as I look back now that I'm 50-some odd years old, it was easy. It's not easy for these young men. And so I have had the privilege myself a few years ago of sitting on the Board of Regents for a university here in Texas and serving. And I will tell you, being in that position, such as you are in your appointed positions, I became extremely aware of the power that you have to create access in education with the way that you make sure state dollars are used. And I will tell you, when I left my 6-year term, I stayed committed to how am I going to, one of my passions is education, access to education, and then diversification in our field. And this was a perfect tee up for me to be a part of this, because it also, our staff, I told you we have over 300 therapists on our staff, and they enjoy paying it forward, just like Randall was saying. They want to mentor these young men. They want to see our profession be more diversified. It keeps them on their toes, and it's an enriching experience for all of us. So I'm glad to be a part. We believe me, we get a lot in return.
Well, we're grateful for all of our partners, and we couldn't do it without each and every one of those partners. As I mentioned to you, that it took a good many touch points, and what we were finding is the earlier we could inform people about the allied health professions, the better. So this year we have the opportunity to expand the program, and we're reaching down into the early college high schools. So we hope to get underrepresented males more aware of the wonderful opportunities in allied health professions earlier, so then that pathway can be a little smoother and a little quicker for some of those men. I think we've got a program that can be sustained, and we've got people that are committed to it, and we're looking forward to having wonderful things for many, many more years to come for these men. We'd certainly invite any questions or comments that you might have, and there's just a few of the men that were inducted into the program at our last induction ceremony.
I did have one question. It looks like the earlier that you're able to talk with young men, the greater the possibility is that they will at least look at these programs and become interested. Is that true with both of you, Randall and Christopher?
Yes, I believe it's true, because I went through 3 different changes in my major before I figured out that I really, truly wanted to do this, and I'm already at my limit with credit hours and things like that, but I know I'm going to be able to get this done.
Okay.
So it definitely helped.
But once you get through that process, then it comes to the application and the determinations, and so that is not any different than anyone that's applying for the program. So that's a level playing field at that level.
Yes, the process is, I'm sorry, I might let you talk about it, because he just went through it. He's in his first semester with PT school. It's a competitive process, and these young men don't have, they're competing just like everybody else to get in. What we're providing for them is very often the support prior relative to advising and a mentoring process like they've talked about and things like that, because we found that kind of not knowing the unwritten rules is where the limitation is at times. But as far as the application process, it's a competitive process, and it is and by the way, we're trying to get them to apply to multiple schools. We're not just trying to get them to apply to my school, although mine's the best, but we're trying to get them to apply to multiple schools.
I didn't hear you offer or say that you had extra funding, or this was a grant, or are there other scholarships available, and are they able to work as assistants while they're in school? Is that part of the process?
It is the grant did come from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board.
Okay.
It's the Minority Health Grant Project,
okay,
and that's what started the project.
Okay.
But there are no scholarship funds associated with that. The scholarship did come from our business partner, and then we also Target. We reached out to Target Incorporated, and they have a minority male project, and they receive some, and then some of our men receive some of the competitive scholarships at our institutions. So that's how they were supported with those scholarships. We do have some clinical experiences locally too, in addition to our True Care, where the men can do some shadowing, and then they do earn some part-time money with that experiences.
We do have one scholarship when they're in physical therapy school that helps them, and that's the one that Sheila has provided that Dr. Keller mentioned earlier, and it's competitive, but it gives some priority to our men.
I would think there would be more industry partners that you might could bring in that would help with scholarships. It's a very worthwhile program. I applaud you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Williams, congratulations on being class president.
Thank you.
And would you tell me your personal story, how you got your path into this area?
Okay. Well, born and raised in College Station, Texas. I came to UNT with my advisor from Houston. I did my undergrad at the University of Houston. I was a graduate assistant. I taught activity courses. I met a guy who was already in the program. He was one of my students. Kind of brought me to the idea of physical therapy. And he got me in contact with Dr. Keller, our program coordinator at the time. And I was just persistent in wanting what I wanted. You know, I looked into it. I found information, and I met Dr. Holmes, and it kind of just flourished from there. The information was there. I just had to go find it, and they had it. And honestly, the rest is history.
He's being a little humble. I mean, he had but he's had a rather circuitous route. He got a master's degree prior to getting into PT school, so he'll have a master's and a doctorate, and extremely good. All of the cognitive, academic, and non-academic variables. But he's been very impressive since he got into PT school, and he's been a leader. And we rode down this morning, spent 3 hours together, and that I'm not sure that we even breathed. We talked so much. So I'm really excited to have him in the program.
But to kind of go further than that, I wasn't ready to apply to PT school straight out of my bachelor's degree. I was afforded the opportunity to get a master's degree, and kind of led me into this program, which ultimately gave me the outlet that I needed to get to pursue what I wanted to pursue.
Thank you. Let's hear the same of Christopher.
How I got into the program?
Yeah. What your background is?
My background, I went to TSTC, and they're probably here right now, for building construction technology. I thought I wanted to do that because that's what my grandpa did. My parents didn't have any college experiences. I always liked building, construction, and all that. But then I ended up working for a general contractor, and it's just a hard life. And went to community college, went through a little more steps trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Got my personal training certificate. Then I applied to UNT, started going there for originally health promotion. And then I figured out their kinesiology program is really good here, and went to that. And then the semester after I got into it, I was like, what am I going to do with this degree? Got an email from Allied Health Pathways program. It's like, this sounds fake. It's like one of those spam things. I was going to throw it away.
That's great.
But I ended up emailing him, and I contacted him and talked to him about the program. And it sounded very interesting, and that how I was training my grandma with physical therapy, or she called me her physical therapist. He mentioned physical therapy, it clicked, so I looked into it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I talked to him, and he was like, yes. And I got into that, and then that's when we heard about the internships, and then I got into that. I got accepted to the internship through the interview, and yeah, the rest is history.
Excellent. Raymond, did you have some?
No, I just wanted to say that we're always looking for programs like this. I like what you all have done, because it's a model that can be replicated in other fields. It's not just, this wouldn't work just in physical therapy. And,
right.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Mr. Vasquez and Mr. Williams, congratulations on your success, and I'm glad you all find out what you really want to do at a relatively young age.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm also a first generation college student. There was no help anywhere, except for what I wanted to look into, and this program really does. It gave me that.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much. Again, congratulations on a wonderful program, and these two young men are obviously great examples of what you're accomplishing. So thanks for presenting it, and do more.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is matters relating to the full board, includes negotiated rulemaking and any other items that we did not go before a committee, or that did not go before a committee. Agenda item 6A is a presentation on the Texas Affordable Baccalaureate Degree marketing campaign. This will be presented by Kelly Carper Holden. Is that correct? Okay. Assistant Director of Communications.
Thank you. It's my privilege and pleasure to tell you about the Texas Affordable Baccalaureate Degree marketing campaign. The degree itself is the state's first competency-based bachelor-level degree from a public institution. And this Bachelor of Applied Science degree it's in organizational leadership and enables students to accelerate time to completion as well as the possibility of saving money. It's a faculty-driven program that involves a collaboration between the coordinating board, Texas A&M University Commerce, and South Texas College, partnering under the College for All Texans Foundation and supported by EDUCAUSE with a $1 million grant that included money for marketing the program. The marketing campaign was also a collaborative approach. Dr. Mary Hendricks from Commerce and Dr. Ali Ismaili from South Texas College had wanted to be here with me today, but they are both talking about the program themselves at other venues. So with the marketing campaign, we could have split the marketing dollars in half and given half to each institution, but instead we opted to benefit from economies of scale and work together. It was not only an efficient use of resources, it also helps create a statewide brand for the program. And looking to the future, other institutions that may want to offer this organizational leadership degree would be able to market immediately simply by adding their logo and linking it to their particular program's website. So who is our audience? There's an estimated 3.7 million adult Texans who have some college credit but no degree. And the idea was to inspire them to finish what they started. We worked with two Austin-based ad agencies, DeLon and Associates on the creative and Elephant Productions on the audio and video. The collaborative marketing team chose the theme, Think Again, and we opted to have many of the materials produced not only in English but also in Spanish to help create word-of-mouth advertising. The landing page is myaffordabledegree.com, and everything that's part of this campaign drives the audience to this landing page. And on the landing page, the two institutions' logos appear, and you can click on their logo and it takes you directly to that particular institution's web pages about this program. The team efficiently used resources throughout the development. We created the audio script, which led to the video script, which then set the tone for all of the other components in the campaign. And one of the things that we did was utilize Pandora Internet Radio. Both institutions had used Pandora for other programs, and we're very happy with the success. Pandora is available on computer, handheld devices, and it includes a 15-second ad that's accompanied by an ad tile that you see on the screen. And the ad tile is connected to our landing page. Before I go on and tell you more about it, I want to play the Spanish ad.
¿Piensa que cuesta mucho terminar su bachillerato y que no podrá obtener su diploma en 3 años? Piensa lo mejor. Use su experiencia y educación previas para tener éxito hoy. Haga clic en el diploma para visitar myaffordabledegree.com.
So again, everything drives to that landing page. We bought 4 weeks of advertising on Pandora, and in that 4-week period of time, garnered 3.2 million impressions. And an impression is the number of times the ad reached the audience or the listener. We also had almost 10,000 click-throughs to the landing page for more information. So we think that was a pretty good start. In addition to focusing on potential students, we also wanted to target employers because many employers offer tuition assistance. And so we developed a direct mail campaign as well as posters geared to employers. And the idea was to tell them about the program with the hope that they would use it, see the benefit of it, by grooming employees who may lack the degree but have the potential for management. Some of the other components included print ads, web banners, flyers, email templates, and also a template for Facebook ad campaign. And we also had video. The video is packaged for potential TV ads. We do have it up on YouTube and also on the coordinating board's website. We have the 30-second video in both English and Spanish. And before I close, I'd like to play the 30-second English video.
¿Piensa que la universidad es muy cara? ¿Piensa que no podrá terminar un título en 3 años? ¿Piensa que su experiencia no contará como créditos universitarios? Piénsalo mejor. Obtenga un título en una institución pública de Texas, basado en su educación y experiencia. Tenga éxito en el mundo laboral de hoy. No consiga solo un trabajo, termine una carrera. No sueñe, construya su futuro. Visite myaffordabledegree.com y descubra cómo hacerlo.
Sorry, that was obviously the Spanish version, but it gave you the idea of what the video itself looks like. Gracias. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. Any questions?
Questions, anyone?
This is just part of our campaign that you all know about to make sure that residents of Texas are aware of all the different pathways to some form of post-secondary credential. It's when you look at the data, Woody Hunt talks about this all the time, and he's chair of our strategic planning committee, always points out that we are not going to meet our workforce goals at any post-secondary level if we just try to recruit kids out of high school to go to college. We're going to have to go back and recover some of these 3+ million adults who have college credit but never finished a credential. And so this is part of our strategy. We know the affordable baccalaureate that was developed in one field at these 2 institutions is not the degree for everybody. It won't be offered in every field. It won't be offered at every campus, but it's another avenue. It's another pathway to a post-secondary credential, and we're going to provide as many options as we can.
Any other comments? Could you just go over the number of hits? I don't know, and the number of follow-throughs.
With Pandora Internet Radio, we had 3.2 million impressions. And again, that's the number of times that the ad reached a listener. And the beauty of Pandora is that within 24 hours after the ad campaign ends, Pandora provides all of these analytics, and they know exactly who their listeners are. We targeted the age group of 25 to 44. And when you sign up for Pandora, there's 2 options. You can either pay the premium and then you don't get any of the advertising, or you get it for free and you get the advertising. And according to Pandora, almost 89% of their listeners go for the free Pandora. So that's why we had such great targets as far as listeners and reaching. As far as the click-throughs, we had just shy of 10,000 click-throughs.
These are the ones that would click on the
ad, yes. Okay. When the ad is being heard, there's a tile that is up on the screen, and the listener can either hit the X and make the tile go away and it turns into a banner, or the tile stays online. And our tile had a clickable link to our landing page. And so we had almost 10,000 people click to then get more information.
And this was over what period of time?
We did two-week flights, as Pandora calls it, 2 weeks in the first part of September and 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of October. We're looking at the budget to see what we have remaining, and we have a couple of other ideas of things we want to do. But another flight on Pandora is definitely one that we're interested in, possibly in January, once all of the holiday ads are finished. That way we can promote the program just prior to the first term in 2015.
That's incredible.
Yes, it really is. It is. And what I like is being able to get those analytics immediately to know just how successful that was. We bought ads using the targeted lists that both institutions provided to us. It was Star in Hidalgo County for South Texas College, and Hunt, Collin, Rockwell, Fannin, Hopkins, and Delta for Commerce, and they were both extremely happy. We split the ads 50-50, excuse me, as between the English and the Spanish version. For Commerce, it was almost exactly 50-50, the number of click-throughs from the Spanish and the English version. For the South Texas College area, it was about a 60-40 split with Spanish to English. And again, it's nice to know those analytics.
And this is basically a 3-year degree. I mean, the time frame is about 3 years. Is that what I understood?
Roughly, it depends on how many credits the student comes in. Yes, how many they come in with.
And what's the cost? What would?
It's a flat rate, $750 per term. And a student can take as many classes each term as they can get through with the rigor of having a B to pass.
Jerry?
I just had a quick question. If you knew, or were there any private colleges that have developed competency-based bachelor's degrees?
That I'm not sure of. Dr. Van Davis may know the answer.
Western Governors University is all competency-based.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, thank you very much. Got some good things happening, huh? Item 6B, presentation on College is Worth It advocacy campaign. This item has been moved from the board agenda because staff need more time to refine the toolkit. Next item is 6C, relating to the Negotiated Rulemaking Committee's recommendation on the allocation and reallocation methodology for tuition set-asides collected by public institutions of higher education for the Texas Be On Time loan program. Lisa Moeller, Interim Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Student Financial Aid, will provide an overview. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Actually, this is fairly straightforward. The statute actually prescribes the methodology for allocating Be On Time funds to public institutions. However, in keeping with Senate Bill 215's requirement that the coordinating board engage in negotiated rulemaking with for all financial aid allocations, a negotiating rulemaking committee was established for Be On Time tuition set-asides for public universities and health-related institutions offering baccalaureate degrees. The committee met on August 4, 2014, and unanimously agreed on the proposed rule. The proposed rule mirrors the statutory language and additionally states that preliminary allocations will be shared with institutions for verification and comment before final allocations are posted on the board's website. The review period is 10 days. Also, the rule states that institutions will have until March 15th to encumber their Be On Time funds, allocated funds. The funds available for reallocation will be distributed to institutions requesting additional funds according to the methodology used for original allocations. The proposed rule was published in the Texas Register on August 22, 2014, and no comments were received during the period ending September 23, 2014.
Move approval.
Motion by John. Is there a second? Chris, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Lisa. Next is item 6D, related to the Negotiated Rulemaking Committee's recommendation on the allocation methodology for the Texas Grant Program. Jane Caldwell, Director of Grants and Special Programs, will provide an overview.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I feel like I'm going to be an instant replay of much of what Lisa just said. The same process was governing the activities regarding the Texas grant allocation process. Senate Bill 215 required all trusteed funds that are allocated to institutions to go through the negotiated rulemaking process. And for the Texas grant program, that process began in fall 2013 as nominations for members to the committee were solicited. The membership for that committee was announced in February, and the committee met twice, in March and in April. Because of the timing of when the committee met, the new formulas for allocation will go into effect for allocations for fiscal year 2016. The committee agreed on several very straightforward goals. One was transparency in the allocation process, which has in the rules a mention of data elements, the formula, and the sources of the data. The committee also called for including allocations for transfer students and associate degree students who are able to enter the program after receiving an associate's degree. And then final, and perhaps one of the more important ones for those of us who do the number crunching, is they agreed not to use current year numbers, but to use prior year numbers, which are solid, not changing every time you look at the spreadsheet. They had a couple of other decisions. One was to, as Lisa mentioned, allow institutions a 10-day period to review preliminary allocations before they are made formal and final. That way, the institutions, if they spot any inconsistency in a number that they would have provided the coordinating board, would have a chance to bring it to our attention before the numbers become final. And also the setting of the February 20 deadline for institutions to use their funds. What that basically means is that we tell them their allocation, and at February 15th, if they are 20th, if they have not used all of their funds, those remaining funds are swept back into the state and subject to reallocation to the institutions. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions, comments? If not, is there a motion to approve? Chris made the motion. Will you second, Dora? Second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Oh, ma'am, would you take that placard back to Ms. Muller so we don't get confused? All right, thanks.
Next agenda item is number 7, matters relating to the Committee on Affordability, Accountability, and Planning. Chairman Jenkins is unable to be with us here today, so we will have Committee Vice Chair David Tesher step in. David.
Okay. So the chairman didn't leave me any specific comments, and I don't have any myself, and we did not have anyone sign in to provide any testimony, so what's before you as the first order of business would be item agenda 7B, which is public testimony. We'll bypass that since we have no one. Agenda item 7C was on the consent calendar, as was 7D. And 7E will be a presentation by Susan Brown, Assistant Commissioner for Planning and Accountability, regarding the preliminary head count for the fall 2014 enrollment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Preliminary head count is something that we do every year. This year we actually asked for the data earlier than we do normally. We asked for it at the beginning of September because we had a legislative hearing where they wanted us to talk about preliminary headcount. So we do expect these information to drop slightly from prior years, a little bit more than prior years, but we're not sure how much. We also offered the institutions a chance to resubmit their data when they got better data, and about half of them did. So hopefully that will firm it up some. We don't include the data at this point from the career colleges because we don't get that until December. So these numbers will go up for the career colleges, and we also don't get the flex entry. Those are students who are enrolled in the fall but they don't start till after the census date. So those are those classes that move around. That has been a growing percentage. It's doubled in the last 10 years or so. And so those will be included in the spring. Overall, we have an increase of almost, a little over 17,000 students. The increase was at the universities. I think Dr. Hillier and Mike Reeser talked a little bit about why the decreases at the community colleges and what's going on with them. So this shows the increases. Part of the good news here is that the universities, because of the admissions process that all the students go through, those will probably not change very much. So we may be actually in pretty good shape on that one. This shows the increases by ethnicity and the decreases, unfortunately. One of the big concerns is that the white decrease this is actually the 4th year in a row that the white enrollment has declined. And also Hispanic. This is the first time Hispanics have actually declined, but it's very concerning because that's the area where we need the most improvement in our enrollments. And they actually took a decline. The other category includes Asians, multiracial, and those students who just don't identify themselves with any of the racial. That has been a growing number, obviously, over the last few years. Generally, once we get the certified data, the institutions have gone back, they've done some checking, that number will go down and some of the other numbers will increase.
Susan, what Is there been any analysis or ideas on why those two areas, the white and Hispanic, are declining?
The white decrease has been because the white population is getting older, so they're kind of moving out of that traditional college age population, so that is part of the decline. The Hispanic, this is the first time we've seen a decrease, and we only have preliminary. One of the things that we think of is because a majority of the Hispanics go to the community colleges and they're more driven by the workforce, that might be part of it. Once we get the certified data in, we'll start looking at that a little bit more closely. Okay. This is a map that shows across the region. You can see where it's not even across the region. Obviously, the largest increases are in those areas, the Metroplex, Central Texas, and the Gulf Coast. West Texas, you see a huge, the largest decline, that's 3,000. Part of that is because Odessa College made a conscious decision to change all of their courses to 2 8-week courses. So they are no longer offering the 16-week semester, except for, I think, a very select few courses. So students who want to take the other, they're doing it for the flexibility of the students, and we hope. It sounds like it's going to work, but a lot of their students will be part of those flex entry students that come on after the 12th class day. So once we get all the numbers, we really won't know how that plays out. But we think that's a big part of the decline there. Two-year colleges surpassed the proportion of students from the universities that back in the mid-90s. And you see they're still above, but they're declining at the same time the universities are increasing. If you look at the red line, you see kind of a wave to it. And that follows the economy. When things are going good, their enrollment either flattens or goes down a little bit. When the economy is not good, it goes up. And so we think that's part of what we're seeing this time in the decline at the community colleges. This is where we're at for the as far as reaching our closing the gaps overall target. We went up. We are just now hitting that line. We have next fall to get 35,000 additional students. And as I said, this doesn't include the increase we expect to see in the flex entry or anything from the career colleges yet. So hope that 35,000 should go down. Given the types of increases we've had lately, that seems like a whole lot. But if you look at the line back in the mid-2000s and 2009, 2010, we had years where we had over 100,000 increase. Again, that was when the economy was not doing as well as it is now. So how much of that we can hopefully bolster with some of the HB5 and some of the other things, hopefully that will help us. Here's some of the types of things that we will be looking at once we get the certified data and we can actually match the students. Are we getting more students from high school, directly from high school? That actually has declined a little bit in the last couple of years. We don't get the high school graduate data until March from TEA, so that's when we'll be able to do that. Dual credit was flat a couple of times, and I'll show you a slide in a minute. It actually went up about 8,000 or so in fall 2013. So we've seen graduation rates increase over time. So that's the good news and bad news. Students are getting out. However, that means you got fewer enrollment. So is that contributing, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just one of the things we will be looking at. And then obviously the students leaving for work. We had a lot of students when the economy was not very well, not doing as well as it is now. We had a lot of students that actually stayed in school and went on for the master's, so we saw a big increase in that. We also saw a lot of students that came back at the junior level or senior level, so they're coming back to finish. I think we will probably see a decline in students returning, but I'm not sure. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at. And this is the dual credit. And if you see we're at, 107,500 dual credit enrollment, 103,000 of that is done at the community college level. This is actually 7.4% of the total enrollment in the publics and so then if you look at it just for the community college and their proportion, it's at 14.3% of their enrollment in fall 13. So it's a big portion, and you heard some of that today from the chancellors. And this has been a growing increase between fall 11 and fall 13. Dual credit enrollment at the community colleges dropped 4.4%. At the same time, if you took out all their dual credit students, it would have been a 6.9% drop. So they're really kind of bolstering their enrollments with that increase in the dual credit right now. And here's just some of the summary. African American enrollment is still going up. We have the decline in the Hispanic and white enrollment, and obviously it varies. So, y'all have any questions?
Members, any questions? I'm sorry, David.
No, I guess there are no questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Susan, how much of this is driven by demographics? For example, isn't the size of the school and college age population declining relatively? In other words, it's growing not as quickly as it did before. It's growing more slowly than it did before.
And we think that's the reason for the decline in the white students for sure. The Hispanics, that doesn't really explain it for the Hispanics, but for the white population, that is, we definitely think that's part of the.
But it also explains the part of the relative decline in high school graduates going to college.
We're actually, if you look at the percentage of high school graduates, that's actually gone down, but the number of high school graduates is starting to increase. It was flat for a few years, and now it's starting to actually come back up a little bit. So we're getting some of that. I don't know what it was for fall 14 yet. Any other questions?
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so let's move on to agenda item 7F, which is a report on facility projects that was submitted to the coordinating board And we're going to hear from Susan Brown, Assistant Commissioner for Planning and Accountability.
I'm just available in case y'all have any questions. I really don't have a presentation.
So we've already seen that report. Are there any questions on the report? Good. Thank you, Susan. Our next and last item, we'll be hearing from Dr. David Gardner, Deputy Commissioner on Academic Planning and Policy, as well as Susan Brown, Assistant Commissioner of Planning and Accountability. Agenda item 7G is an update on the Texas Higher Education Strategic Planning Committee activities.
Thank you. Originally we had hoped to have Woody Hunt, the chair of the committee, with you, but unfortunately he was already scheduled to go to Israel. So we will be sure he's at a future meeting very soon. What you have before you are the goals that you've seen before, and we should have draft on here. They will continue to be a draft until July 2015 when you approve a plan. So I just want to emphasize that. We're at a point now where the committee has at least pretty much settled in until they get different feedback from you or others that these are the basic goals, but we have seen at each meeting some slight nuance changes. We haven't highlighted them, but I just think it's important for you to realize that. At the last meeting, they began to do some actual work in terms of identifying targets for each goal. As you know, with Closing the Gaps, we have targets. Susan just talked about some of those in terms of participation that are key to attaining that particular goal, and as well as identifying some key strategies moving forward. They've just begun that work, so I think thought it was premature to share that with you at this point, but they began that work in earnest at the last meeting. They'll have another meeting next month, and then very critically, at our governing board conference, we have an important opportunity for feedback from the field. So the program is going to focus heavily on these 4 goals. We will hear the trustees and the regents and the administrators attending will hear about these 4 goals. They will hear for each goal 2 speakers on each of the goals. And at the end of the meeting, they will actually break into groups, and with the aid of the Association for Governing Boards, we'll discuss these in detail and we'll get feedback. You may recall that last year at the Governing Board Conference, we began talking about the plan and received feedback from those attending that was given to the Strategic Planning Committee at its first meeting. So this is coming back around, giving them a chance to participate. Just to give you an example of some of the speakers that will you'll have the opportunity here is Woody Hunt will actually be talking on the first goal, and he talks a lot about our international comparisons, specifically that the older age group in Texas is very competitive internationally, but the younger age group is where we're falling behind other countries. Thus, the focus specifically on the 25 to 34 population, so we won't be fooling ourselves with the overall goal. Steve Murdoch will also join them again. Some of you may not know that Steve at one time was a state demographer. He was the head of the Census Bureau. He's now at Rice. He's a member of the committee, and he will be speaking to the demographics of the state, and we'll be addressing some of those things that the commissioner just asked about. We'll have, with the second group, we'll have Stella Perez, who's a senior vice president for the American Association of Community Colleges. She's going to address specifically some issues in terms of community college role at community colleges in terms of increasing the number of graduates. We'll also hear from Pam Tate, who's with the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, who will talk about those older adults the commissioner also mentioned earlier today. How do we get some of them back into the play? So some of what the speakers will be doing is speaking about some things that when the regents talk to each other, they may see as some key strategies emerging in terms of how we might achieve the goals. We'll have Michael Staton from Learn Capital to talk about some of the marketable skills. We'll also hear later in terms of the student debt from Sandy Baum, who's nationally known, and you've heard from her before in terms of financial aid. And we'll hear again from Stan Jones from Complete College America about some of the things that you can do to reduce the debt simply by more efficient graduation from the students. So that's the overall program. The committee's been very good. I hope all of you will be able to attend this meeting and participate. I was asked to meet with the chief academic officers from universities yesterday and shared this. I encouraged them to come to this conference as well and participate. This is a key moment where we need to get feedback from institutions. The committee is discussing, they haven't decided yet as to whether some month in the spring, rather than meeting as a group, they divide up and in twos, go to various regions of the state to share where we are and to seek feedback from different regions so we have more access to people from institutions, to business leaders from the area.
Susan? So can you give the dates of that event again?
The Governing Board Conference is on November 20th and 21st. The key date for this particular discussion is the 21st. That's a Friday in the morning.
It will be in the morning?
Yes, sir.
At what time?
What is it, 8:30? 8 o'clock to noon.
8 to noon.
And then that will be followed by the Commissioner giving a State of Higher Education address and the Star Awards.
Which will be the highlight of the event. Right, Mary?
Always.
Thank you. So I plan to attend, and what is the perception of what they want the role of coordinating board members there? Just be there like any other participant? They're looking for generalized feedback?
Just as with anyone else, a key part of this is you'll hear more detail about this than in the past. I didn't mention that we will have a member of the committee moderating each of these areas. So when we have the speakers, we will have, for example, Lionel Sosa will be moderating one session. He'll be giving an overview of why we have the goal to begin with. And we'll do that with each goal. But then when you're in the groups, you will participate with the regents and talking and discussing strengths or weaknesses of these goals and possible ways to approach them. Our feedback thus far has been very good. Yeah. And as I should say, the Commissioner mentioned the other day, and I think an important point is these goals focus heavily on the student and student success.
So the first goal, you're going to take those individuals next year when we start the new program who are aged 10 to 19. That's your cohort that you're going to follow. Is that correct?
Well, that's essentially correct for that goal. And I do want to say, in terms of the educational attainment, I think it's important to continue to mention this is really a state goal. The economy has a lot to do with this. So the reality is our institutions could do a very good job of graduating people, but if the economy is bad and we lose people to other states, we might not do as well. Correspondingly, if the state does very well economically, we tend to draw in people with credentials from other states. And the institutions could underperform. I don't think they will, so it's really a statewide effort. Then when you get to the next three goals, it's really incumbent on the institutions directly to be responsible for the actual achievement, though they clearly contribute to the overall educational attainment.
Well, and part of it has to be also the student's responsibility. So, I think they need to clearly have, and I think you have some well-aligned goals. I want to talk about the educational attainment. By only looking at that one cohort, are we not being broad enough to say that we care about those who are over age 34? We're not following them. We're not giving them a benchmark. We're not trying to get people who have attended some but not completed to go back into higher ed, complete, and get that degree. First question. Right. Second question is, we had some testimony before us in the past that we needed 68% of the working age population by 2020 to have a higher education certification or degree. Are we setting ourselves too low at 60, or what? Why was 60?
I believe that was 58%, not 68%.
Expected in Texas.
By 2020?
Yes. That was the Georgetown University.
Right.
I think it was Van had a group up here, and I thought it was 68%, and I don't see him in the audience anymore. So
I'm sorry, who?
Van.
I don't recall a number being as high as 68%.
I'll check back with him. But if it was 58%, then 60 would be appropriate.
Yeah, my recollection is this is a percent or two actually higher than what Georgetown was saying. For around this time, they didn't have this precise year. One reason that, and Larry Faulkner, the vice chair of the committee, actually suggested this specific age group because this is the age at which we are the least competitive internationally. Where we're falling behind is with our younger students. Our older students, our older population is actually better educated than in most countries.
So this is our gap.
This is our real gap. And when we think in terms of those people you're talking about, they will be included in the completion goals. This doesn't specify age, so it could be a 68-year-old graduating, it could be a 40-year-old coming back and completing their degree, it could be virtually anyone. It could be someone that, when they were young had not finished high school, they were essentially in adult education programs, and they maybe went through Accelerate Texas and got to the 8th grade but got a job, and then years later came back and took another credential. So that's all included in the completion. But those are all the types of questions you have to think through. And we have, much more data on each one of these. I can tell you that we've been asked questions backwards and forwards, and frankly, there have been so many versions of it. I'm not as precise as I should be with you at the time, but we can provide, for any of you who want it, all of the data that's been provided to the committee. I will say for everyone here, if you go to our website, the main page of our website, and click on the committee, we have every presentation that's been made to the committee available there. I think there's some very good ones. And if any of you individually would like to walk through this in great detail, we would be glad to do that. I will say, as we've advanced, as we seem to have settled into these areas, we have a staff member particularly assigned to these areas now who are getting more and more depth into the data and are being responsible for making sure to ask more and more nuanced questions. I think the last 6 months, the types of questions you're asking now, we really need to fully understand.
Any other questions from committee members? Go ahead.
I was just wondering, for the student debt, the undergraduates, are you only going to be tracking like 4-year undergraduate or bachelor's degree, or are you talking about associates?
We actually kind of have as sub-targets like we did for the closing the gaps. We have one level for the universities and one for the community colleges. Okay. So we have that disaggregated.
And this is a combined figure.
Right.
So community colleges, it's about 40-some-odd%, and universities is about 78% right now. It is worth mentioning that this is really the level at which we are, and everyone's agreed that we will do very well to keep the debt ratio at this level. Is much better than in most parts of the country. The other thing is, in terms of targets, right now about 57% of our students have debt, and one of the targets will be for that percent not to go up. So we do have the fortune of being able to, at least as long as students stay in state, we can tell you what they're earning when they graduate.
Under marketable skills, are they going to actually have a course or have counseling on identifying what their marketable skills are based upon the degree? Or are you saying that we would only graduate people with degrees that have marketable skills?
Well, yeah. Actually, all of those are possible. This is one we have to work out. I think there will be some differences between how institutions do it. But when a student graduates from a program, whether they're in art history, zoology, or electrical engineering, they should know when they graduate what their marketable skills are. And the belief is, from the day they enter in the institution, they should begin to work on that. As Commissioner mentioned, we have 2 graduate students who are sort of scouring the country right now for some best practices. We believe that there are 2 things operating here. Number one is we have students graduating that do have marketable skills and they don't know what they are. I mean, they don't really know. They take some of them for granted. There have been studies over the last several decades that say that the industry consistently wants 3 things. Employees that have critical thinking skills, employees that communicate well, and also that can work well with others. Well, we know that there are many liberal arts majors who have those in very well developed, but they take them for granted. They don't see those as marketable skills. So they need to learn what those are and how to even use them in applying for jobs. In other areas, there's a possibility the University of Texas Business School has a number of certificates that are available to students in other majors. Sorry? In a number of majors. So that's a possibility. This is something we need to work with institutions on. We need to figure out the strategies to do this. But the idea is students themselves shouldn't be thinking about this their senior year for the first time, and institutions need to, at an early stage, start helping students think about their job prospects. College is about more than just getting a job, but every student has a reasonable expectation of getting a good job when they graduate. So how do you do that? I just learned at Texas A&M, in the Honors College in Business, they're actually working in the Honors College for simple things like teaching students how to dress appropriately, and they need to attend their Honors College classes is that way. How to communicate ideas in a clear-cut fashion to people, how one would communicate in a workplace. There are a number of things one can do. Some schools have talked about using minors as a way to supplement. There are many areas where students would be aided by outside of their major taking courses in additional statistics, some areas in computer science, graphic design, depending on the area. But it has to be developed by the department. It's going to vary by each department in terms of what those skills are. And thus far, we've received good feedback on this one. The issue is how to do it, and I do think there will be differences by school and by department, but the main thing is there needs to be some emphasis there in a way that doesn't exist in all cases now.
But wouldn't the coordinating board's role in this be to identify best practices and publicize it to others?
Well, that's what the commissioner was, and I made reference to, where we have 2 graduate students working. We're trying to identify what's out there now, but I think there'll be more work after that, and we will do that. And I think there are ways that we can work together. I have talked to a couple liberal arts deans informally about, is there some way that we might perhaps even get a grant, work together to get a grant for some of the liberal arts programs to work together and develop some ideas with each other. Now, we're just developing a plan now, so I think we'll be interested in this regardless of whether it's in the plan. We've discussed on our part, this is the first time it's been said publicly, it may not happen, but should we consider that when people submit degree programs that they, going forward after the development of this plan, what are the marketable skills our students will have when they leave the program, and how will they develop them? But we need to talk to the schools about this because it needs to be feasible, it needs to be doable, but the main goal is to make sure that we're thinking about that next stage in their life, and not just if you're a history major, becoming a history teacher or going to graduate school or law school. There are other things. You may recall when Rand was talking, they illustrated, I think it was medical record management or something like that, degrees, and there were 20 or 30, they looked at what degrees the students had. It was at least 20 or 30 degrees were in the workplace doing that one particular job, and they ranged from about 10, 13%, if I recall correctly, that had something that you could understand it clearly. But there were also psychology majors, English majors, history majors who were employed in that field. And so they were able to take that degree and whatever else they took and apply it. So we need to make that less of a random process.
Thank you very much. This concludes the portion of the meeting on the Committee on Affordability, Accountability, and Planning.
Okay, members, we have lunch scheduled, but due to the time, we're going to go ahead and continue. So, Janelle, will you take care of matters relating to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success?
Yes, thank you very much. For the Chairman's overview, I'd like to share with you from the P216 Division. Judy Laredo wanted to report that since April 2014, the coordinating board staff have collaborated with the Texas Success Center of the Texas Association of Community Colleges in regular meetings that address the Texas Success Initiative, the strand of Pathways to Progress Conference. The work culminated in a 3-day meeting, September 21st through the 23rd, with 36 teams representing the community college districts in Texas, along with a team from Arkansas. The main focus of the training centered around identification, verification, and understanding of data related to the new TSI assessment instrument, especially in appropriately classifying students. Training also included information on success points and how institutions can use data to make informed decisions around improving their non-traditional instructional options and support services for the underprepared student population. Dr. Laredo also wanted to bring our attention to that at the September cause meeting, the committee heard an update on the status of the teacher quality evaluation. Dr. Laredo indicated that the full evaluation will be presented to the board at the October meeting. She wanted us to know that she meant to say that the evaluation results will actually be presented at the January 2015 board meeting, not today. Item 9B is public testimony, and I don't believe we have any member of the public requesting testimony. Item 9C1 is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to the request for a new degree program from Sam Houston State University for a Doctor of Education degree with a major in instructional technology. We have Dr. Rex Peebles here to help us.
Good morning, members of the board. This item represents an online professional practice doctorate that would prepare individuals to lead in integration of education and continuing education and corporate training projects that would combine instructional technology with pedagogy. This is a position for which there is some established workforce demand. We suspect at least that there are probably well over 600 positions that will be available for this annually beginning in 2010. As you know, one of the directions, I guess, that higher education is heading in is the use of more and more technology in the classroom. And as I learned yesterday at a presentation, the use of technology is not something that most faculty members are familiar with. And so the use of it in an effective way in terms of learning is something that professional development is required for, and these kinds of degrees help prepare people to deliver that kind of professional development. It's a 60-hour program. It is also an online program that has been approved by our Learning and Technology Advisory Committee. And we have folks here from the institution. If you have any questions, or I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Members, you have any questions?
Move approval.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second? Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you. Items 9C2 and 9C3 were on the consent calendar. Item 9C4 is the consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to the request for a new degree program from Texas A&M University Corpus Christi for a Doctor of Philosophy degree with a major in geospatial computing sciences. Rex.
Thank you. This is a rather unique program, both at the state and at the national level, that combines both computer science and geospatial science. And the idea behind this program is to train people to actually make computer applications to geospatial science. The A&M Corpus Christi is kind of uniquely positioned for this geographically. Because of its location, it can do both land, air, and sea measurements and can conduct research in all three of those arenas in terms of geospatial science. It's a face-to-face program with 60 semester credit hours. There is some indication that there will be well over 500,000 additional jobs available in this area. This is one of those things that has wide application in diverse fields such as agriculture, or what is commonly referred to as precision agriculture, and computer systems analysis, remote sensing, and so forth. There are only two other programs in the state of Texas that are even similar to this, one at the University of Texas at Dallas and the other one at Texas State University, that have well-established programs in geospatial sciences, but this one does have the unique feature of combining computer science technology with the geospatial.
Any questions?
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second from John Steen. Discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Items 9C5 and 6 were on the consent calendar. Item 9C7 is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to the request for a new degree program from the University of North Texas for a Doctor of Philosophy degree with a major in mechanical and energy engineering. Excuse me.
Thank you. This is also a somewhat unique doctoral program that combines mechanical engineering with a strong emphasis on energy applications, which, as you know, has become more and more popular, I guess would be one way to put it, as the United States tries to become energy independent, as we try to reduce our carbon footprint across the world. Then the idea of making the delivery of energy itself much more efficient has become much more important, and this program is directed at addressing those issues. It's a 72-hour semester credit hour program that will be face-to-face. It also builds upon their existing Master of Science degree in Mechanical and Energy Engineering, which they've had since 2007. So that program has been successful, and it will build up on that. And it can also take advantage of their research facilities and teaching facilities at their own Discovery Park, which is devoted to that. There are no other doctoral programs in the state of Texas that have this kind of focus attached to them. The only thing that comes close is there is a PhD in mechanical engineering at the University of Texas at Dallas that does have a concentration in thermal and fluid sciences.
Any questions?
For approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 9C8 was on the consent calendar. Item 9D is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the board relating to the Community College Transfer Student Report. Rex Peebles.
Thank you. The 83rd Legislature, through Rider 55, directed public universities to submit annual reports to the coordinating board regarding their efforts at transfer from community colleges. And so this report has been, we've asked the institutions for information. You should have the report in your packets already. And so we do this on an annual basis. There have been some minor changes made to the recommendations page. And I will point this one out because it's, in some respects, it's somewhat of a substantive change to the recommendations where we had, and it's in the third bullet, where it talks about Texas Public University advisors and other academic support staff, where we had faculty before. But this is it's a good catch by the commissioner on this, because this really is more appropriate to advisors than it is to faculty. So I only regret that I didn't catch that one myself. And then there are a couple of other changes in grammar to this report as well.
Any questions for Dr. Peebles?
Move adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Items 9E through H were on the consent calendar. 9I is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the board relating to grant awards under the Nursing, Allied Health, and other health-related education grant program. Rex.
Thank you. You should have in your packets as well some supplementary materials for this particular item. At the cause meeting, we promised that we would bring forward the actual institutions that were going to be awarded under this program. And your supplemental material outlines those. There are three awards being made, one to the University of Texas at Arlington to really look at the whole issue of competency-focused approach to clinical experiences, but it really looks at the issue of the use of both real clinical experience and simulated clinical experience, and trying to draw the proper and appropriate balance between the two. One of the issues that's often been discussed is the nursing shortage in Texas and pretty much worldwide in a lot of ways. And we all know that the two really difficult issues to deal with in terms of trying to address the nursing shortage is what to do about nurse educators themselves, but also clinical space, which seems to be always at a premium, especially if you're trying to expand or start a new program. The use of simulation can help address that. In this particular study is designed to look at that issue and try to find what the appropriate balance would be between both real clinical experience and simulated clinical experience. And as with other things, we have folks from the institutions here if you want to ask them any questions about this. The other two awardees are transition to practice competition, and this is to look at that transition from graduating from nursing school to actually going into a practice. And we all know that oftentimes there's somewhat of a disconnect between theory and practice. And so what you learn on the job may not necessarily be what you learned in school, and vice versa. And so there's always this issue of how do you transition in any profession, but in nursing in particular, from what they've learned in school to actual on-the-job experience. And so we have two awardees, one to Baylor University and one to the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center, to look at bridging those competencies so that the education that folks get in nursing schools is closer to what they will actually be doing in practice.
I read through these. I think these are really good grants.
Yes.
Move approval.
You have a motion?
Second.
A second? Any discussion or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Items 9J1 is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board related to the proposed amendments to Chapter 4, Rules Applying to All Public Institutions of Higher Education in Texas, Subchapter B, Transfer of Credit, Core Curriculum, and Field of Study Curricula, Sections 4.22 and 4.31 of Board Rules concerning core curriculum. Rex.
Thank you. The original proposal by staff had two substantive changes to the rules regarding core curriculum. And one was to delete the requirement that institutions report their annual revisions to the core by March the 1st. And what we're suggesting and recommending is that be deleted, and that the submission of revisions to the core be left up to the institutions to determine. They have a much better idea of when their catalogs are due, when their registration dates begin, when they need to have this information in the hands of advisors, and so forth. And so what we'd like to do is not impose a deadline date from us, but allow them to choose when they want to submit. They'll still be allowed one annual submission per year, and we also plan to build into that a more formal process for actually reviewing what they have sent to us and being able to get back to them with our decisions, and then allowing them to then come back to us if they have questions about those decisions, and in an effort to work with the institutions to make sure that they have a viable core. The other thing that we had proposed was to expand on the numbering system that we use for the core component areas. Each component area, communications, math, life and physical sciences, and so on, is designated on a transcript with a number. 010 is communications, and so on. And what we had hoped to do was also allow component area option courses to be designated we received 2 comments on this particular change, one from the head of TACRO, which is the registrars and admissions officers organization in Texas, and we received also one from Dallas County Community College District, both urging us to study this a bit more because there are logistics involved in this, and so we have recommended to CAUSE, and CAUSE is recommending to you that we drop that particular piece of it and that we be allowed to study that some more and actually bring in some more stakeholders and look at this issue a little bit more before we try to proceed with it.
Rex, the core curriculum date, I really support that. I think we need to be more encouraging to the schools that want to be flexible with their schedules and flexible with their semesters and when students have to start and when they, have to sit in a classroom for 5 months or whatever. So the more we can do that, being flexible with schools, then we encourage them to really be more flexible for the lifestyles of their students. So thank you for that, and maybe it's a step to continuing. Any questions?
So. Thank you.
Discussion?
Move for approval.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Items 9J2 and 9K are on the consent calendar. Item 9L is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to a change in the procedure from approval by the board to a staff report to the board on plans for closure and or teach-outs pursuant to Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Section 7.75. Rex.
Thank you. Chapter 7 refers to proprietary schools in the state of Texas that operate under either certificates of authority or certificates of authorization. And this particular rule change has to do with the fact that they are required to notify the coordinating board of closure, and then that notification is then brought to the board for approval. In reality, we are usually, the law actually says we're supposed to be notified 90 days prior to closure. The reality is that we usually don't get anywhere near 90 days notification prior to closure because, quite frankly, a lot of the institutions themselves don't know they're closing 90 days prior to closure. And so when we bring this to the board, it's always after the fact. They have, you're approving what is already a done deal, so to speak. They have already closed their doors. Our interest is in trying to do 2 things primarily. One is to make sure that the institution's student records are housed someplace that students will always have access to them, particularly so that they can get transcripts and they can take those transcripts to other institutions. And the other is to do whatever we can to help facilitate teach-out provisions for those students that are already in this program and need to try to finish that out. But the reality is that closure is already well behind us by the time we bring it to the board. So we're proposing that provision be eliminated, that it simply be a staff acceptance of the fact that they're closing, and that we will still report to you, as we do now, all of those instances where that happens.
Yes.
So you would be reporting it to us, but the caveat is each of the 3 areas that you talked about, allowing for teach out, helping to transition the students in maintaining their transcript records, that would be an automatic ask of the staff to have that function. Once you're aware of a closure, you're going to automatically do that before we even get a report that someone's closed or closing.
Yes, sir. We do that now. So.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. Item 9M is a report on the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Improvement Act funds to colleges for basic and leadership grants. Right.
Thank you. The federal government, through the Perkins funds, provides money for career and technical education in the state of Texas. There is currently a 70-30 split on this. The TEA gets 70% of the funds available, and the coordinating board gets 30% of those funds available. Those funds are basically divided into two categories. One are basic grants that are determined by an allocation formula given to us by the Perkins folks at the federal level, and it revolves around the number of enrollees that they have in career and technical education programs, and then those funds are allocated to them based on that formula. The other part of this is leadership grants that we reserve. I think it's 10% of the funds are reserved for leadership grants. And then those are allocated to institutions on a competitive basis for institutions who are developing new pedagogies, innovations, or expansions of programs, and with the idea being that whatever they do will result in some best practices that can then be disseminated to the rest of the state. It also includes the basic WECM Leadership Project, which maintains the inventory of career and technical education courses in Texas. And you have in your packet a list of all of the institutions, the eligible applicants, and the dollar amounts that they received, plus a summary of the Perkins Leadership Grants themselves and who received those and the amounts of money involved in that.
Members, any questions? This is an information item. Very good. Thank you. We'll go on to item 9N. So consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the board relating to the study on availability and use of open educational resources in Texas. This is Senate Bill 1, General Appropriations Act, Rider 52. Rex.
Okay. I'll give you a brief overview, and then if you have questions, I hope that Dr. Davis is still back there somewhere to answer them. Rider 52 directed the coordinating board, in coordination with the Virtual College of Texas, to conduct a study about the use of open source material that can be used in the classroom or in online learning by institutions. And so this study was done in conjunction with them. There are several recommendations attached to it as well. You should have the report in your packet to see that. And if you have any questions about it, then we'll get Dr. Davis up here to answer those.
The recommendation is that we send this report to the legislature.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 9O is a report on the FY 2014 annual report of low-producing programs. This is a report only. Rex.
Thank you. The annual low-producing report is required by us to produce, to file every year. As you can see in your packet, there are two criteria for determining whether a program at an institution sort of winds up on the low-producing report and is reported to that institution's Board of Regents and/or Board of Trustees. And that is if they have less than 25 graduates for undergraduate programs, less than 15 for master's degrees, and less than 10 for doctoral programs. The additional criteria is that if they wind up on that average over a 5-year time period, if they wind up on that, if they have that average below average for 3 years or more, then they are deemed as low producing, and then those programs are reported to the appropriate Board of Regents or Board of Trustees for that institution. And in your packet, you have several tables there. You also have some supplemental materials. And so I would tell you that the initial report that is in your, the blue pages in your packet is erroneous. And if there's any good news in this, it is that the list of institutions and list of programs on the low producing report has been reduced to 0 as a result. there were a series of oversights and mistakes made by us in producing this report that have to do with data that goes back for 3 years and exemptions that were granted, and also some issues with the reporting of SIP codes. But low producing is determined not necessarily by the major that you have, but by the SIP code under which they're reported. So you could actually have more than one particular degree program under a SIP code. And so the supplemental materials reflects the accurate report, and we have undertaken steps in the division and looked at our processes to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We've also undertaken some steps to make sure that you get the low producing report earlier next year as well, so that it's much more useful to institutions as a planning tool.
Any questions?
I didn't follow that. You said it's been reduced to 0?
Yes, sir.
And explain that to me again.
Well, in the original packet, there were 7 programs that were identified as low producing. And once we went back and checked our data, checked the exemptions that had been granted over the previous 3-year time period, what we discovered was that none of those 7 should have been on the low producing report.
Well, that's good news.
Yes. Well, yes, ma'am. So yes, I'm happy it didn't go the other way.
Any other questions?
So, unfortunately, I'm looking at Table 2. Each one of those institutions, under the prior rules, had a perception of a low-producing program that statistically was not correct, and we've sent them now letters saying you can reinstitute those programs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we've looked at our own internal way we were looking at these and said we calculated this incorrectly, therefore you can have that reversed.
Yes, sir.
Does that require our board action to do that, or?
No, sir. Actually, let me back up a step. I'm sorry. That piece of it is not a result of the inaccuracies that were first reported on Table 1. Okay. Those are actually the result of the change in law that said that institutions that were formally told they had to close or consolidate or get exemptions to programs, that they can now come back and ask for those programs to be reinstated. And these are and not very many institutions have done that. I mean, which is kind of interesting. There's been relatively speaking, with the number of programs that were closed, there's been a very low percentage of programs or institutions that have asked to have programs reinstated.
So the ones in 2 were the ones we sent letters saying you were eligible to reinstate, but we don't know how many of them actually reinstated.
I believe that
have requested reversal.
Yeah, I believe that all of these have been reinstated. Help me out, Reinhold. Have all of these been reinstated?
The one in Table 2, last year's review, we suggested, because of the low producing numbers, that they should be or could be closed, but the institutions decided not to do that. Last year, we did not enforce any closures. The Table 3 in your book are the programs that were being phased out based on previous years' closing decisions by the Queuing Board, but those programs, the governing boards decided not to close after all. They were still in phase out, and so they keep going as if they never were closed. And they will be reviewed in the coming years, like any other program.
Other questions?
Oh.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have something else to add?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, we were just discussing. I think Dr. Tesher, you were actually looking at Table 2 in the supplemental
Right.
material, and Reinhold was actually addressing Table 2 in the blue pages.
Right.
So we eliminated Table 1 from the blue pages, in effect, so your supplemental materials moved since Table 1 was reduced to 0, then we no longer had a Table 1, and so we moved everything up. So.
All right, item 9Q was on the consent calendar. That was information only. Item 9R is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to scaling effective developmental education strategies and providing professional development for faculty and staff to support those efforts statewide in order to improve advising, access, and acceleration of underprepared students. And we have Dr. Judy Laredo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't know if you recall, but at the cause meeting, I gave a brief update on what is now known as Rider 44, a report that is required for us to submit to the legislature, which is an update on our response to our developmental education plan, our 5-year plan that we developed from 2012 to 2017, which you approved and was submitted. So what we have been doing over the last several years is our work around developmental education to determine what would work to improve the process for, number one, moving students through that pipeline quickly who are in need of assistance, as well as to identify instructional strategies that would help move them, accelerate them through this process, at the same time not keeping them there for 2 years in traditional courses, which are 15-week courses. We've also begun our work over this time frame to look at the assessment that would provide more complete information about a student, not only where their strengths and weaknesses are, but what would be the best way to remediate that weakness. The whole purpose is to try to minimize the number of students who enter developmental education and never come out, and move them quickly into the pipeline of credit-bearing courses. So in response to the plan, the areas that we have addressed are, number one, the development of the TSI, our new assessment instrument, which not only assesses a student, it diagnoses and provides the prescription of what would be best for the student. The second part is looking at the advising process, where you typically think of walking into an advisor's office. They ask you what you're majoring in or what you would like to do. They give you a course and you leave the room. But now what we look at is holistic advising, looking at all the elements of a student, not only the courses they may already be bringing, the grade point average they may already have, the courses they took in high school, but the elements of life that are also affecting what they're doing in college, whether they're working, full-time students, a financial situation, do they have obligations as family? And that's a whole new process of holistic advising. In addition to the fact with the testing process, you don't just walk in and take a test. You also have a pre-assessment activity to help you prepare to take the test, to understand the depth of it and why you're doing it. And I think the most important part of our work is the type of instructional strategies that we had found that would be successful with students more so than the traditional course, meaning non-course based, modular courses, integrating reading and writing instruction, looking at the fact of paired courses so that you have a support course with your credit-bearing course and moving you through the pipeline quicker. The professional development that is required to help faculty and institutions prepare to move under a new model of delivery system in developmental education. The inclusion of online courses, of technology for helping support the instruction of these students. And then recently, which you saw was our update on our operational plan for how we're addressing the student population or that adult population that doesn't quite fit into that developmental ed group of population. So this is what the report consists of. You received the report last time. We sent it out to you. We also have some data results where we are finding that, for example, our institutions, there are 88% of the institutions are ready to implement integrated reading and writing courses. They were given a time frame, so many more are ahead of the frame than we thought. 54% of the institutions are reporting that they are integrating non-course-based courses. So we feel really good about this work. We feel very proud about submitting this document to the legislature because it's definitely showing that we are working as a team with our institutions. We have done meetings across the state over the last months, and professional development is in the process of beginning to move forward over the next year and a half. That concludes my report, and I would ask your permission to submit this document to the legislature.
A lot of work here. We thank you, Judy. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. I apologize and want to go back to agenda item 9P. I just skipped it. Just thought I would. So this is a report on institutional request acted on by the commissioner or assistant commissioner since the previous board meeting. This is an information issue only. Rex.
This is the quarter report we give. You'll notice that there were 165 new degree and certificate programs approved in the last quarter, and that is an inordinately high number. But if you look at the charts, you'll notice that many of those were for the University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley. So this is to help get them underway and start putting into the inventory the programs that they'll be starting in fall of 2015. So the high number is really reflective of that. The rest of the numbers are pretty average in a lot of ways. 63 certificates of authorization, and notice that it doesn't necessarily mean that we have 63 new schools operating in Texas. They are required to renew on a periodic basis, so this could be, a lot of these are certificates for folks that have been operating in Texas for sometimes for many, many years.
Any questions? Excellent. Okay, item 9S is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the Board relating to the appointment of members to the Community and Technical College Leadership Council. Dr. Peebles.
We'd like to recommend that K. Paul Holt, who's Vice Chair of the McLennan Community College Board of Trustees, be appointed to the Community and Technical College Leadership Council. It is made up of half of the membership is made up of community college or technical college presidents, chancellors, and the other half is made up of members of boards of trustees of community colleges or technical colleges. And it's a rather small group, and we often have issues with quorum. So when we have vacancies, we need to fill them as soon as we can. So,
any questions? Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, that concludes the business of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success.
Thank you.
A lot of work.
Okay, the next agenda item is number 10, matters relating to the Agency Operations Committee. This committee is chaired by Chris Huckabee. Chairman Huckabee.
It is thrilling to be the only thing standing between you guys and a successful completion of a board meeting. My notes say I have exactly 4 minutes, so here we go. Hang on. Item A is a committee chair's overview. During the agency operations meeting yesterday, committee members heard reports on the agency reorganization, the Henson Hazelwood College Student Loan Program, purchase of the new student loan management and origination system, the legislature's new strategic fiscal review, the progress made to date on addressing the findings of the Be On Time internal audit, the fiscal year-end financial report, and an update on the internal audit and compliance monitoring activities. These were reports only and did not require any action. Item B is public testimony. We did not have anyone registered for public testimony. Item C, consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board related to the board's operating policies and procedures. This is an item actually that was brought before us at the last meeting. We brought it back and did some revisions to it. and we will need approval on this. Linda Battles and Bill Franz are both available if you have any questions of them. A lot of work, and they got kudos yesterday as they deserved. A lot of work went into building this document, and they've done a very nice job on it. If there's no discussion, I do need a motion. I have a motion from Mr. Steen.
Second.
A second from Dora. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. This concludes the Agency Operations Committee agenda.
Bill, help me out here a little bit. Are you folks going to stay and have lunch? I mean, because if we gather as a group, we can't adjourn. So that's. Oh, absolutely. You can do that, but
it's the least we can provide.
Okay. Well, in that case, then how long do we need to eat?
20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Okay. How about 12:15? Is that okay? We will come back to order and reconvene at 12:15.
Mr. Chairman, I have to get back to San Antonio, so.
Okay. Very good. Okay. We are back in session. I need to announce that we did not discuss any business and no action was taken during our short lunch break. This concludes our meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried, and we're adjourned.
All right.